Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to the Mayor and Commission's monthly meeting of the Unified Government of Athens-Clarke County, to our monthly business meeting. Excuse me just a minute. I thought I was organized before we started, and it looks like I wasn't. Anyway, welcome to our meeting. If you would like an agenda to join with us tonight, they're on a table just to the right and just outside the doors. If you're joining us remotely, you can get an agenda at accgov.com. I'm flying blind today because I don't have any of my script notes with me. And if you have an electronic device with you tonight, please turn it off or to silent. And if you have any handouts that you'd like to share with us, if you would give them to Mr. Berryman, he'll make sure we get them. Our rules of the commission state that each citizen can have 3 minutes at the podium on any issue. And so we ask you to please honor that 3-minute rule. There's a light on Ms. Spratlin's desk that will be green when you start. It will turn yellow when you've got half a minute left. So please get your comments finished so that I won't need to interrupt you. And this is the time that and there'll be several opportunities tonight for public input. The first one will be on item number 1, which is the designation of the daffodil as our community flower. The second one will be for our consent agenda, which are items 2 through 9, and then old and new business, which are items 10 through 20, and then after that we will hear our recommendations from our planning department, and the rules are slightly different from that. There's a 10-minute cycle for pro and con on planning items. But as each of these opportunities come up, I'll let you know so that you can get to speak to us on the subjects you want to speak to us on. Then there's one final opportunity at the end of our meeting to talk to us about anything that was not on the agenda tonight. And again, all those fall under our 3-minute rule. So now we will have public input on item number 1.
Madam Mayor, point of order, roll call.
Thank you. Ms. Spratt, will you call the roll, please?
Here.
Here. Present.
Present.
Thank you.
Present.
Here.
Present. Here.
Do I have a motion for approval of the minutes?
So moved. A second?
July 3rd, 10th, and 17th? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Do we have Ms. Spratt? Okay, now we'll do our public input on item number 1. And I'm going to ask Ms. Wright if you would like to be the one to comment.
Yeah, I would like to go ahead and start with making a motion, and then I have a little something to read about the history, about the daffodil and the work that Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful has done, and I'll read the resolution.
Okay.
I make a motion that we accept the daffodil as the official flower of Athens-Clarke County.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
No, wait a minute. Wait, let me read. And then
Oh, you want to do it?
If we
Okay.
could do it that way?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. The resolution, first of all, I want to start off with a little summary of Athens-Clarke County. It's a beautiful history and the program of the daffodils. Over 10 years ago, an Athens nonprofit, Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful, KACCB, initiated a pilot program with our local Georgia Department of Transportation, GDOT, maintenance office, to improve the aesthetics of State Route 10, the Athens Loop. Our Loop 10 serves as the main thoroughfare around the city of Athens and for exiting to our distinctive neighborhoods, UGA and downtown. In the first year, Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful raised money to purchase 2,000 daffodil bulbs that were planted at the Martin Luther King Jr. Highway 441 and Loop 10 on and off ramps. Continuous work has been done on the daffodil projects by KACCB board members, partners, and over 500 volunteers. The efforts of many groups of people have planted over 100,000 daffodil bulbs on 5 Loop 10 interchanges. This daffodil collaborative project has grown to foster great working relationships between our state government through GDOT, local government agencies, Athens-Clarke County Landscape Management Division, our Solid Waste Department, and our Police Department, and nonprofit agencies of KACCB and UGA, as well as a wide variety of citizen volunteers. Each year, the KACC Board raises funds to purchase the daffodil bulbs with the long-term goal of completing all 11 Loop 10 interchanges. On this day, when our mayor designates the daffodil as Athens-Clarke County's official flower, it is important to recognize the efforts of KACCB to initiate and sustain a major collaborative project that has greatly improved the aesthetics of Athens community. We believe that beauty is a silent but powerful force that makes communities safer, healthier, and more livable. In the words of Margaret Mead, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. The KACC Board will continue to invest in beauty campaign to raise $10,000 for the 610 Loop 10 ramp site. The KACC Board thanks all of those who have worked hard to contribute to the notable daffodil project. And we thank the Mayor and Commission for this resolution, as it is a significant sign of approval to continue the hard work that is underway.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. That was beautiful, and I want to thank you for your leadership, but also our Keep Athens Beautiful, Athens-Clarke County Beautiful board and leadership. And I would like to ask you all if you will come join us up here at the front, and I have something to present to you. But before, as you're coming up, I will ask all in favor.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Would you like me to read the resolution?
sure.
Why don't you let them come up and...
Come on up here. Come on up here, guys. Yeah.
So that they can be up here when we vote? That would be nice.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I'll read the resolution while everybody's up here. Does that sound okay?
That sounds good to
Okay.
me.
A resolution changing the official flower of the unified government of Athens-Clarke County from the iris to the daffodil. Whereas on July 7, 1946, the mayor and city council of Athens, Georgia, passed a motion to name the iris the city flower of Athens, Georgia. And whereas the mayor and commission of the unified government of Athens-Clarke County, mayor and commission, now wish to designate a new flower as the official flower of the unified government of Athens-Clarke County. And whereas the daffodil, one of the earliest harborings of spring, is a symbol of hope, renewal, optimism, rebirth, and new beginnings. And whereas the daffodil, as one of the oldest cultivated plants, has ties to our own historical namesake. It is native to the Mediterranean region, was used ornamentally and medicinally by ancient peoples, and is believed to have received its name from the Greek myth of Narcissus. In a community named after Athens, Greece, the great center of learning in the classical world, it is only fitting that our community should designate an ancient flower cultivated by the Greeks themselves as our official flower. And whereas the daffodil is a hardy, self-sufficient plant capable of thriving in the face of almost any obstacle, much like the resilient people of our community, and whereas over 100,000 daffodil bulbs have been planted over the last 10 years in the Athens-Clarke County community to beautify our Loop 10 on and off ramps and other public spaces as part of a grassroots partnership with Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful. The Unified Government's Landscape Management Division, the Georgia Department of Transportation, and citizen volunteers. And whereas the grassroots effort to begin our daffodil planting project and the continued dedication of volunteers and proponents of this project reflect the spirit of community engagement, generosity, and service that is central to our unique local culture. And whereas the mayor and commission recognize that beautifying our community through the planting of daffodils makes our community safer, healthier, and more livable. Now, therefore, be it hereby resolved that the daffodil be, and it is here designated, the official flower of the unified government, resolved this day, 7th of August, 2018.
And I am gladly signing that. And I want to also give a shout out to Stacy Farrell and Jeff Montgomery. Jeff is our public information officer, and they created those beautiful words that Allison just read. So now I would like to present you with your official official copy of the resolution. There's a resolution that will go in the records of the Mayor and Commission, but this is one for you all to keep. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I believe Allison has something that she wants to.
Well, yeah, and then we'll vote. Then we'll vote.
Okay, all in favor? It's a good thing since I've already signed it. Thank you.
And this is for the group, Stacy. Daffodil and Elkins, everybody.
Like this, Stacy, like this.
Get together, and I think Commissioner Wright needs to be in there as well.
I'm sorry, can you get everybody to sign?
I think he can. Brad's heads over everybody, all right? On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, daffodils. Thank you.
Try to say that without smiling.
We have one final thing that we would like to offer. We would like to give Mayor Denson a token of our appreciation. This is actually a photograph from the Atlanta Highway daffodils. Mayor, you've always been very supportive of our beautification efforts, and we so appreciate it. So we wanted to make sure that you left with something that reminded you of your support of our beautiful city. And in addition, we have one for City Hall that we will have a designation label put on. So this is for you personally.
This will be hung in my house where I see it every day, so that even when those beautiful daffodils are blooming around town, I still have them. Thank you. I saw Jared Allison over there. I thought he was going to present something to you. Thank you so much.
No, you're so welcome. Mayor, so you guys together.
That is so unbelievable.
You guys want to scooting?
Thank you.
And this is really daffodils in Athens. So it's not Photoshop.
Jared photobombed.
They are.
That's because they're just a flower, fresh-faced flower that should be in the picture.
That's right, just a flower.
We don't get to see it, everybody else does.
That was so special, and now that I don't need them, I found my notes. So, but anyway, thank you all very, very much for this wonderful Athens flower, and literally try to say daffodil without smiling. You can't do it. And before we start, I want to do something so I don't make sure that I don't forget, because I think it's so important, and that's to thank our central services staff for coordinating this beautiful renovation of City Hall, because it is so pretty and it was so past due doing, and you did just an absolutely wonderful job. So thank you very much. So now we'll go to our back to our regular agenda, which I have really sort of messed up a little bit because we took it out of order. But I wanted to do that one thing separately because it was something special for our community. We will now take public input on anything on our consent agenda, and these are items 2 through 9. So if you'd like to speak to one of those, if you'll come to the podium and give us your name and address, and let us know which item you're addressing. We would appreciate it.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, my name is Richard Boone. I live at 430 River Bottom Road here in Athens, and I was appointed by the mayor and the council, one of 5, on the Classic Center Authority to oversee the operations of the Classic Center. Not on the day-to-day operations, but to kind of monitor Paul, watch what goes on. Paul has a great staff. We don't have to do a lot, but one thing we do is part of our responsibility is to maintain the facility. That don't mean just maintaining the outside of it. I came out of a business where refrigeration was life a little bit. So you have to take care of everything inside the building. Refrigeration, your lights, your painting, your carpet, and everything else. So what we're doing right now with this program we're putting together is we're going to upgrade basically everything in the Classic Center as far as lights, refrigeration, a new chiller for the theater, which the one in the theater is living on borrowed time. It's about ready to go out. It really is. So what we're doing here tonight is just, we got some people here that can answer questions. I'm certainly not going to try to, because I found out about this about middle of the afternoon that we was going to do this. I thought it was on the consent agenda and I was going to come up here and leave, but that didn't work, did it? But what we're doing here tonight is just this afternoon is just try to explain what we're trying to do. And what you'll know, we take our job very seriously as far as overseeing the operation. That is not my classic center or your classic center. It's a community classic center. And we're very, very proud of it. And if there's any questions that need to be asked, I got Richard.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Thank you, Richard. I'm going to take it off the consent agenda and put it on the discussion, so some of the commissioners may have a question, and I'll ask you all to come back up.
So would I
voting.
speak out of turn?
Nope, you did just fine.
Okay. Now, I don't want to come back and do it again, okay?
Yeah, no, right now it's still on the consent agenda, but I'm going to take it off for discussion since there's been some changes in it.
Once again, we do appreciate y'all's support. We really do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boone.
My name is Charlie Maddox. I live at 115 Avalon Drive, Athens, Georgia. I come on behalf of the Classic Center Authority. This august body appointed every member there, and we take to heart our duties. One of the fundamental duties of the directors of the Classic Center is to oversee the financial operation of that. We come before you with a proposal that will indeed prove prudent to our operation. We're asking for your support because, again, it's so directed, but it also assists us in increasing the assets therein with no monetary or any liability to this body. But the 5 people that you appointed there have unanimously voted to support this, to go forth, and we've done so with the thought in mind, we have to do it, and we're looking at the best way to do it, and that's why there's a slight change with your backing and your blessing, we're able to do what we try to do all the time, save taxpayers' money, save Athens citizens' money, and save the community money. So that's why, again, unanimously, the board of directors that you appointed to oversee the financial operation of the Classic Center have agreed to come to you with this. So we ask for your support. And again, in a technical thing that Richard and I would not dare touch, we have our experts here for that.
Thank you, Mr. Maddox. Anyone else wish to speak to any of the items on the consent agenda? Those are 2 through 9. Okay, seeing none, we'll come behind the rail. And I'm going to move item 7 off the consent agenda since there's been some changes in that item since we had our agenda setting meeting. Would any commissioner like to take anything else off? Yes, ma'am.
8, question.
Anybody else? Okay, we will now move to our old and new business, and those 2 items we will handle.
Madam Mayor, don't we have to vote?
Oh, yes, we need to adopt the consent agenda. Do I have a motion for the
Madam Mayor,
consent?
motion for approval of 2 through 6 and 9.
Okay, have a motion and second. Yes, sir, go ahead.
In order to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to operation of non-traditional vehicles and for other purposes.
All in favor of the motion?
Well, I don't think we ever got a true second.
I thought we had a second.
So,
Okay. Have a motion and second. All in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We will now go to citizen input on old and new business, and that item 7 and 8 will go to the beginning of that for discussion when we start our discussion. But anyone who would like to speak to items 10 through 19, this would be the time to come to the podium and give us your name and address and let us know which item you're talking about.
Good evening, Mayor Commission. Tim Denson, reside at 483 Quailwood Drive. I'd like to speak to item number 19. I just have 3 quick points I'd like to make. First off, happy to see that y'all are discussing ways that we can improve public comment and community engagement here at our meetings. Number 1, I'd like to see, instead of the purchase of a countdown clock, I would recommend the purchase of a flat screen display for the back wall somewhere. So not only can the time remaining be put up there for citizens to see, but also they can know what item is being discussed and alert members of the audience when public comment is open, which there's, as we all know, some confusion sometimes when that's happening. I think this will help the meetings run more smoothly and to keep audience members informed. I'm also concerned a little bit that requiring citizens to fill out information cards before being able to speak at the podium could unintentionally create an additional impediment to speaking before the Mayor Commission. Perhaps these cards could instead be made optional and utilized by guests who choose to do so. The third point I want to do is I've heard that there is a CDO that's going to be put out there where we can move the Mayor Commission work sessions to City Hall so that they can be recorded and broadcast to the public. I'm strongly in favor of this. The information that's presented and discussed at those meetings is invaluable to not only the Mayor Commission, but to the citizenry as a whole. This body has a responsibility to be transparent and to relay public information to the public. And when we do so, it makes our government and democracy stronger. Over the years, when me and other people in the citizenry have asked for work sessions to be recorded, I have often heard two reasons why we haven't. One, that the commissioners like the informalness of non-recorded work sessions and the ability to dress more comfortably, which, I can understand. The second reason I've heard has been that that we can y'all could speak a little more informally too, a little more off the cuff, in a more unfiltered manner. I believe and hope that you all agree that constituents deserve to hear and see the entire process. And by allowing them to do so, they will be more understanding, and since they will have the full context of the entire process. And I think I also speak for the majority of Athens residents when I say, we really don't care if you guys govern in a tux or a tank top, just as long as you're governing. And I think the pilot program that y'all did in February proves that this is worthwhile. I went and checked this afternoon, and there's already been over 226 views of those February work session meetings that are on YouTube. So it's better late than ever. I hope these changes can be implemented and that y'all will all support this CDO. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Denson. And normally we don't speak when we're having people at the podium, but I want to make sure that this doesn't get overlooked. The comment cards that were mentioned by Mr. Denson just now, the purpose of those is because we record in the minutes all of our speakers, and it's very difficult to get the names and addresses right. And this is for that purpose and for no other. There's no intimidation intended. So I just want to make sure that the public understands what the purpose of those cards is. So, anybody else wish to speak?
Hi, my name is Chris Dowd. I live at 188 Northview Drive. I just wanted to speak also in favor of moving the work sessions to City Hall if that's the only way that they can easily be, televised and recorded, because it's just so much easier to. I think more people will be able to see what happens at City Hall, which I think is a good thing if it's on TV.
Thank you, Mr. Dowd.
Madam Mayor and Commissioners, my name is Morgan Tichy, and I live at 197 South Milledge Avenue, Apartment 2. The Upper Oconee Watershed Network, or UON, supports the plans for the amphitheater to be constructed on 215 Boley Drive, so this is item 11. However, we would like to raise our concerns with the pump station and force main required for this project. The space designated for this venue is surrounded by Sandy Creek and its tributaries. Sandy Creek drains directly into the North Oconee River, which is one of Athens-Clarke County's primary sources of drinking water. The use of a pumping station puts the surrounding streams at risk for sewage contamination on the failure of the pump. A multitude of factors impact pump performance, such as size, duration of use, and pollution levels, which make it difficult to estimate the probability of failure, although some of the studies have reported a 34% per year failure rate per pump. As Sandy Creek watershed is already considered to be impacted by the county, adding the additional risk of sewage contamination by employing a nearby pumping station seems impertinent. A more reliable alternative to a classic mechanical pumping station is a vacuum system. These systems resist leaks as the negative pressure keeps pipe contents within the lines when a break occurs. Typically, these systems have been used in areas proving difficult for gravity-fed sewer lines, just as this one, or in environmentally sensitive areas such as the Corin Cove Eco Resort, which is located in close proximity to the barrier reef. One of the drawbacks of vacuum systems is the need to be within a short distance of a connecting gravity sewer line. Because the connecting point for the Boley Drive project is less than a mile from the proposed site of the pump station, the site is well within the required range for a vacuum system. Additionally, a single pump is sufficient for a single drainage basin, thus there would be no need for any additional pumps. Therefore, we recommend using a vacuum pump system instead of a mechanical pump system for this project in place, as I've just recommended. We encourage you to vote today to define an option for the proposed pump station and force main for 215 Boley Drive and employ a vacuum sewage pump. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Teege. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Scott Haynes. I work for W&A Engineering, here representing Millworks to speak on item 10. We started the Millworks project in 2012. During the last 6 years, this has come before you now. I guess this is the third time. Throughout that 6 years, we've seen various battles with the site as things have been uncovered. We've seen collapsed buildings, but we've also seen a lot of success. Stabilization of Building A and Creature Comforts opening for business being really paramount to that. I've said this before related to this project, but I'm really proud of this project. Anytime you get a chance to preserve history, it's a special thing and not an opportunity that comes along all the time. Right now, we're in a fight with this site. We are just simply have to get this thing stabilized soon. I know that cost is generally not a consideration for rezones. I understand that. Pertaining to new development, I certainly understand the profit margin for a developer is not something you should consider. But historic preservation is different. We're talking about feasibility here, and feasibility equals the ability to save structures. Right now, it's just currently too expensive to not only rehab these buildings, but then to partition them out for residential use. It's a function of our strong economy right now and rising construction costs. I know what you may think. If it's too expensive now, we can just wait. But we just simply don't have the time to wait for these costs to adjust. The end wall of Building A literally fell overnight. It was after a big rainstorm. Right now, we're in the middle of one of the wettest summers I can remember. In the first 6 months of this year, we've had more rain than all of 2016. We're 2 inches shy of the 30-year annual rainfall right now. Water intrusion is the enemy of these structures. Once the roof fails and water gets in, the process of collapse is expedited and is imminent. We have seen it over and over again out there. Every time I step on that site, which is often, there's a new piece of a building on the ground. We really need to move. We need to move fast, and this is why we're asking for the flexibility of placement for these uses. I know this isn't generally what you're used to seeing in PDs, but this isn't a typical PD. We hope that the commissioner-defined option that you have before you tonight will give you some comfort in the placement of those uses and allow these guys to react to the opportunities that come forth. We really need to get control of the site. We need to get this thing stabilized soon, and we really, really need your help. I hope you can support this tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Haynes. Anyone else wish to speak to us?
Hi there, Mayor and Commission. I want to thank you for, my name is Russ Crump, by the way, and I have met quite a few of you, and I want to thank everybody for listening to us about our project. I like Scott, am very excited about what we have finally been able to put together. This is a project that needs to be done, and it needs to be done soon, and we have finally come up with what we feel is a plan that works. I think it's great for the city. I think it's going to be really great for the people here because it's going to make a really neat old property accessible to everyone. And again, I just want to thank you guys for reviewing and listening to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Crump.
My name's John Williams, and I'm here to speak on the same item. We we do appreciate your time and effort over the last month in trying to come up with a solution for this project. I know it's a little bit unusual and out of the ordinary, but we are very excited about moving forward with it. The community does have a substantial interest in this project, specifically because of the investment in creature comforts, and we want to see those guys expand and do well. We know right now in the economy that we're in, we can't put any residential in those buildings and have it be successful. It just is not viable. But we do, on the flip side, and on a very positive note, have local Athens businesses that are interested in going in that area. We've already worked on several projects in that area. The Maypole restaurant's now open. We have, our company is interested, and we're going to be going into that area. We got Creature Comforts, who we know wants to expand into there. And there's 3 or 4 other businesses, all with local ties, that want to be in that mill. And it's going to be an exciting project, and it's going to be a profitable project for the community in job creation, in tax base. We really appreciate your consideration in this, and I hope that you'll approve it tonight so we can move forward, like Scott says, and get out ahead of this thing and get these buildings stabilized. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Madam Mayor, respected commissioners, my name is Peter Norris. I reside at 460 Sunset. I rise in support of item number 16, revision of the Bishop Park Master Plan. I would begin by commending Leisure Services for their inclusion of public input. I attended multiple planning sessions, some led by the UGA Environmental Design over at Oglethorpe Elementary, and had plenty of opportunities for input. I think if anyone complains that they weren't heard, I would respond that they just weren't paying attention. The resulting plan, I feel, nicely meets the needs of a neighborhood, which was in itself a complicated task. As a member of UON, I also commend the engineers and stormwater staff for taking care of the historic runoff issue that has plagued that park for a long time. I would recommend that the plan consider using semi-permeable parking surfaces, such as those used at the Pound Street bus depot. That could reduce runoff and set a nice example for some of our other construction activities. As always, I thank you for your time and your service.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. Anybody else wish to speak to us before we come back behind the rail? Okay, we're going to talk about item number 7 first. Any commissioner have any concerns or questions you'd like to get answered? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I just want to bring up, continuing to consider the feasibility of solar on the Classic Center. I mean, we're going to see a lot of energy savings from this investment, and I hope that we can continue to consider that. I know that, working out the numbers and the low rate that the Classic Center is offered with Georgia Theater doesn't make the savings as big as one would think it might be, but I feel like we really need to go in that direction and support renewable energy whenever possible. And we do have a very, very large rooftop there. If not to feed the Classic Center energy, perhaps another nearby downtown municipal building.
Yes, sir.
I move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion, a second.
Mayor, also, just a little extra information for you very briefly. The Classic Center staff were able to find a bank that would give them an additional break if the county backed the loan to the tune of $30,000, with $7,000 in financing costs, which would net $23,000 in savings. And this is something that y'all have done before on other projects.
Great. Okay, all in favor?
Madam Mayor,
Oh, yes.
Could you say that again? Because it was confused. Did you mean that we're backing it for $30,000, or this bank is giving them a loan for $30,000? It wasn't quite clear in the way you stated
Well,
it.
the loan is for $1.5 million essentially.
Yeah, which is what it says here.
And if we back it, that credit worthiness that we bring to the table, it will save them $30,000. Less $7,000 of expense, so netting them $23,000 worth of savings over the life of the loan.
Okay. That's what I thought you said, but it wasn't quite the way you said it.
Sorry about that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Yes. And item number 8, Ms. Dickerson, you want to pull it off?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I've already been receiving inquiries from constituents about putting in proposals. And I was just kind of curious when we might see or expect to see the SPLOST proposal form so that we can pass those to the public.
We have a draft that we've worked up. The public solicitation would begin on September 10th and run through November 13th in the proposed schedule that's before you.
Right. And
you'd like to proof a draft of that before it's distributed?
I don't know that I'm asking about that. I think what I'm asking for,
Give people
though, is
advance
when.
notice.
Yeah, because I've already heard several said that's not a lot of time. Once we get that, we're not going to have a lot of time to get our proposal together.
Sure.
So as soon as we can get them, and so I'm just kind of curious when we would see that.
Okay.
So that the public would get it.
We can probably finalize that within the next few weeks. As far as how we advertise it, there's still some steps that need to be taken. And I think one of the first ones is for the Citizens Advisory Committee to say, typically what you ask them to meet and say, we do need a SPLOST. And that's something that we've done in the past.
So would that be September 4th after that date?
Yes, that would be September 4th. So once you adopt those program goals, I think that would be, it's not a lot of advance time, but we could talk about going ahead and being ready, anticipating the approval to, we need to approve the goals next week before we finish the form. And then once you formally adopt them, we can telegraph that to the public.
So the formal adoption would be the September meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Hamby.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the things I was thinking about with this proposed implementation schedule, and this is something we didn't do with T-SPLOST. I know we have a lot of staff members during T-SPLOST. They presented proposals to that citizens group, and they did it before. I just feel like if staff is presenting to a citizens group about proposals that go on a T-SPLOST, those should be vetted by this body first before they go to the Citizens Committee, so that we have a chance to, because, we may be in a situation where staff is presenting a project for SPLOST that gets approved that we wouldn't agree with, and we would save everybody a lot of trouble if we approved whatever staff developed list go to the Citizens Committee first before they do that. So I don't know where to put it within this thing here, if that's something y'all agree to do. I don't think it hurts having that step in here to make sure that we're aware of what this body is sending to a citizens group for SPLOST.
Makes a lot of sense. Mr. Herod.
I agree.
I have mixed feelings about that. I mean, the thing about SPLOST is it does have that citizen committee that is the primary vetting mechanism before it comes to us. So I kind of have mixed feelings about, I know we're the ones who make the final list, but, often that list could be decided by the feedback we get from that committee and the general public once it's out there and presented by that committee.
Ms. Dickerson, then.
Thanks, Mayor. I guess I wouldn't see this any different than when we ask staff to come forward with grant requests. We typically don't have them come forward with a grant that we don't let them apply for a grant unless we've approved that grant. Because if we got the grant and then the mayor and commission said, wait a minute, we didn't approve it, then it would make us look bad. So I agree with Commissioners Hamby and Herod on that.
Mr. Gertz, and then we'll get you.
I guess my hope would be that in the goal setting process, we'd set those goals and contours for the program tightly enough that we wouldn't get anything kind of crazy and errant. But I guess within those goals, like let's say we say that there's a certain kind of economic development activity that we would want to see that would be a program goal. By setting those goals, hopefully we get some creative juices flowing. And now, I guess what we do once those creative juices flow and the applications come in, whether that comes to us first and then the citizens, or the citizens and then us, I guess I see that goal setting process as probably key to getting what we want.
Mr. Smith.
I'm a little ambivalent about this, but I see why it could actually help the Citizens Advisory Committee process. If there's a staff initiative that
that's going to go to Citizens Advisory Committee. The Citizens Committee has to balance the budget. They have to say, okay, here's what the expected revenues, and these are the programs, and they balance the budget. If we were to eliminate or even expand these staff recommendations, then the Citizens Advisory Committee would be in a better position to balance the budget. And when the recommendations came to us, it would be easier for us to balance that budget, at least as far as the Clarke County government initiatives that are on there. So I think I support that idea.
Mr. Bailey, and then we'll come back to you, Mr. Hamby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I understand Commissioner Link's point, but traditionally, the mayor and commission have gone ahead and put some items on the list before it's given to the Citizens Advisory Committee. It's just the way we've done it. It's a good way for us to get some of the major things that we see as being very important on there. And of course, the Citizens Advisory Committee can look at things and take them off, put them on. And it still has to go before the citizens to vote on later on, of course. But traditionally, we have given a short list of items before it's even turned over. So that's how I would recommend that we stick to that methodology.
Mr. Hamby.
Well, I was going to say, a prime example was during T-SPLOST, where certainly what we did, or what staff did, was go to the Citizens Committee with a budget of repaving. I forget what that budget was, if you remember that. 26 million, and or something like that. But it came back to us, and we knocked it down. I guess what I'm saying is, let's see. I just want to see what staff is presenting to a Citizens Committee that we appoint, the Citizens Committee, because if we run across one of the citizens we appoint, well, I didn't know staff was presenting that project to y'all, or I didn't know they were asking for $100 million for repaving. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I still think what I'm suggesting is let's look at what staff is thinking about presenting to the Citizens Committee so that we can weigh in on it and say that doesn't fit our goals. That's not what we want to have happen. Here's something else to think about. And then they still have to go through the Citizens Committee. I'm not suggesting they don't go through the Citizens Committee. They still have to do that. It's just making us aware of what the staff who answers to us is presenting to a citizens group who we represent. I just think it does make it more transparent for us and everybody else involved in it.
Well, I'll say this, and I'll get to you, Ms. Wright. Actually, anything that staff presents is technically us presenting it because it's our staff.
And we need to know that.
So it makes total sense for us to know what's being presented on our behalf. So,
Right.
Ms. Wright.
Is this step that we're talking about and knowing more details before the committee meets, isn't that task number 3? That is the work session next week on the 14th. The mayor and commissioner will review the proposed program goals for the SPLOST 2020 program and draft selection criteria that will be used to select the projects for the program. Isn't that what we'll be doing at the work session?
I don't see that because I know we've talked about, talked about leisure services wanting to apply for stuff. We've talked about transportation, public works wanting to apply for stuff. I mean, there's all sorts of government departments that want to apply for stuff, and I just think we need to sort of look at the bucket that we're sending over to a citizens committee and say, the citizens may have some input on some other project that's not a staff project that we need to leave some room for, and such as that. So.
Well, would that not be a good time for us to be having some of this?
It could be.
Or is it too early?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
It's probably too early. That's why I was shaking my head.
Staff hasn't done their proposals yet.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking. I don't know where in this implementation thing that extra step on our part could fall into.
Well, I think it would have to happen before the submittal process.
Right.
And I don't know, I'd have to huddle with staff to figure out how that works. I don't know if it would compress the submittal window, because we would need a process by which we had a clear path forward from y'all in the sense of we were going to have to, we'll have to do a work session, I guess, similar to the presentations at the Citizens Advisory Committee to hear what the rationale is behind them. And, the Citizens Advisory Committee meets frequently over a good amount of time. And then I would imagine there'd be an agenda item that says, these are the ones that we approve, so that we know that we have a clear consensus of the commission about which ones they submit.
Right.
So it could impact, it could compress that submission window. I've already asked staff to try to combine a list of things so that we're aware of what's going on as well. So that's just off the cuff. That's there might be a consequence there that would shorten the submission window. Doesn't mean that we can't go ahead and telegraph the form as Commissioner Dickerson asked, so folks are preparing. And as experience has proven, we normally receive most of the projects in the last week. To the point, because folks have a lot to put together when they compile these things.
Mr. Harry, did you want to speak?
Well, I just wanted to say, at the end of the day, the only group of individuals that have the legal authority and or responsibility to put something on the SPLOST ballot is us. And I would hate for, although the Citizens Advisory Committee that plays a very important role, it is an advisory committee, and I would hate for them and other people to spend a lot of time on a project that our staff initiated that we as a collective body have no interest in supporting. It seems to me that if a proposal is being submitted in the name of the unified government of Athens-Clarke County, then the governing authority needs to give that the thumbs up before we get too far down the road.
Yes, Mr. Gertz.
Just thinking about an approach that we could take to move forward tonight and looking at the program tasks. One prospect is to approve moving forward with everything through task 7, which is that submission window, and then to have the mayor and commission return to conversation for future tasks beyond that.
Yeah.
And I don't know how the colleagues around the rail feel about that, but that would say, all right, here we do the goal setting process as we would normally do at the start of a SPLOST program. We open up that window with the application that we just discussed. And then we would have time, certainly between now and November, to discern exactly where that kind of first editing process, if you want to think about it that way, would occur by the mayor and commission.
Ms. Neesmith.
Well, thinking about the process, I think that maybe we should take it this way, and that is that the staff presents us with the concepts and approximate costs of the projects that they have in mind, rather than going through all the work, all the budgeting, all that detail work that they have to do to prepare the formal proposal that goes to the Citizens Advisory Committee. So that would shorten the amount of time it takes for us to review those projects, give them input, and then they can move forward, but not make them go through the whole application process first.
Right. I would agree.
That makes a lot of sense. Let's see if I've got, yes, sir, go ahead.
Yeah,
Mr. Campbell.
and I would agree with that. I just want us to be aware of what our staff, like the mayor said, of what our staff represents us, so we need to be aware of what we're representing to a citizens group. From that standpoint, we saw with T-SPLOST, there were some things on there that staff had asked for that I wasn't aware of, and we ended up talking about it or taking some out. It kind of puts us at odds with staff when we have to take some stuff out like that from that standpoint. And another analogy, another example of when we send stuff to the legislature, we always have to vote on that project. Staff doesn't initiate stuff to our legislatures to do on behalf of this community. It is a list that has to come before this body in order to move forward.
Did you want to be recognized?
It's just another accountability step.
Ms. Lynn?
Yeah, I just want to express some support for Commissioner Gertz's idea to go ahead and approve this through that, through Task 7. I am a little uncomfortable with the how condensed this timeline is. The referendum isn't until next November. That's over a year away. And I know there's a lot of work to be done. I do feel like this is a very condensed timeline. If we're going to have this project list set, I believe, is it January? Yeah, I would like that option to be able to kind of revisit the tail end of this timeline and get more time if need be.
Mr. Gertz, would you like to offer us?
Sure, and just in terms of kind of thinking about not wanting to ask anybody to expend needless time, it seems like Task 8 is where we begin to talk about detailed project costs. project budgets, reliable estimates, land acquisition, all those kinds of things. So the initial submission would be relatively general, and then the details would follow that initial submission. So I'd make a motion that we approve staff moving forward with tasks 1 through 7, and then returning to the mayor and commission for further direction.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Who did it?
Well,
I think Andy wanted
Yeah,
to-
I had a question. I had a question.
I had a
too.
question.
Please go ahead and ask
So
so we
Kelly,
can get
just-
it answered.
Commissioner Gertz, so I mean, what I'm anticipating is if the staff come, all the different departments are asked, what would you like to see on SPLOST? And let's just say 17 proposals are put forward. There may be 10 of those that we collectively think, yeah, we'd like to see a fully worked out proposal on this, and 7 of them, for whatever reason, we just don't think we want to pursue. So are you anticipating that decision point is made here, or where would that decision point be made?
I would anticipate that would be the new task 8, is kind of that first cut to say, hey, of these 17 projects, these 4 don't even meet muster for this body. And so let's not forward those to the citizen group and waste their time and waste staff's time doing a more detailed analysis.
And before we move on, I'll just respond to Ms. Link's concern, is from the timeline, everybody's known when this current SPLOST is going to pay off, and I'm sure people have already been anticipating what they're going to be bringing to us, so I don't think the timeline's going to be a big problem.
I know there's a lot of citizens who are still unaware that this is coming so quickly.
Yeah.
Mayor, if I might, I just want to make sure that we don't want to overwhelm you with detail, but we do want to give you the appropriate context so that you make informed decisions either way. So that may involve some multiple meetings, because if it's 17 proposals, we're not going to do an hour per, but we want to give you, and we'll give you information in advance too, but it could be a good bit of information.
Yeah, right.
Could I just finish my comment? Please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I don't want to
you
get
had.
into the where
Yeah.
exactly in this, where exactly do we fit this in? Is this 7A or whatever? But if we do it where Commissioner Gertz is suggesting, after item number 7, that seems to be right in the period of public solicitation for projects. So it seems to me that we need to see what our staff is thinking about before we get to that point.
So there would be no earlier discussion of like the name and concept for specific projects. We would only be talking program goals prior to that. So I mean, it's and maybe Blaine can help me out here, but in my reading of this document, we'd at least have to get to 8, because that would say, we want a new archery field, or we want a new, fill in the blank. We'd at least have to get to that point. Or somebody wants a new archery field.
Well, 8,
shooting range.
So there's a gap of time between November and May, and of course there's holidays. Those are going to be multiple CAC meetings where they're hearing, and if you didn't know, everybody that presents a proposal gets an interview and presentation. So, but that gap is filled with those presentations. And so I'd have to work with staff. We need to be on the front end of this, before they start their presentations in earnest.
I mean, it seems to
Well,
me
this is kind of odd to keep discussing an item after we voted on it, but I want everybody to get their questions answered.
Somewhere
We hadn't voted on it
a little
yet.
bit between 5 and 6.
We didn't vote on this yet.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
We did,
Well,
Yeah. But
we
but
half voted because.
But the thing is we can still go back and tweak it. So
Just to make a remark, we're not asking for us to review what citizens are submitting.
right.
We're just asking for us to preview what the staff has in mind to present.
And approve.
So it's
Yeah.
not going
Yeah,
to slow
exactly.
down or hinder the citizens' activity
Yeah.
of putting their proposals together.
Yeah.
I just want to make clear, the roll call was, I don't know if a roll call was called, I don't think it was, but I don't think the discussion was finished, but what I wanted to make clear on, a further direction in my mind means means another vote by this mayor and commission on what those projects are going to be. So I just want to make sure we're clear on that.
Yeah, that's
in the
my
minutes.
intent in that.
Well, let me suggest that maybe Kelly work on this next vote about this document. You know, filling in the discussion that we've talked about here about what the next steps are. Maybe work with Blaine to figure out what those steps would be in this document that we further approve at the next meeting.
I would expect that at the August or September work session, we would require a follow-up conversation to talk about exactly that, what those sort of next cars on the train would look like.
Well, I would ask that y'all approve this so that we can move forward. And then at the work session, we'll present an alternative to amend the schedule. And on your September meeting, I understand the intent. We could add that to the September vote to amend the schedule to reflect what you want. We can have that discussion at the work session.
Blaine, we've already, we just adopted it, so we've adopted the schedule.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just the 7th.
Through 7.
So we can adopt
As it stands.
what
Oh, I
happens
see.
after 7.
But you can still do what you were talking about, Blaine.
Well,
Yeah.
I really think
Yeah.
that this needs to happen before 7. Or during 7.
Yeah, during 7.
No, it needs to be before.
Well, Kelly, did you say before 8 or
Well,
or at 8?
It might be concurrent with 7.
Yeah.
So if you wouldn't mind a resubmission of a motion that
You want a motion to reconsider?
may we reconsider, Madam Mayor?
Is that in order, Mr. Behrman?
Person who voted in favor of the previous motion can
I'll make a
move
motion
to reconsider.
And we don't have to wait till the next meeting? That's
No.
what, okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to reconsider, a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Gertz, the floor is yours.
So then, kind of, would the consensus be that we approve this through task 6, or that we approve this as drafted with the understanding that amendments are going to be forthcoming?
By what time?
I think the open-ended it makes a lot of sense,
September
Kelly.
meeting.
We will, at the September work, the work session a week from tonight, we will try to offer a schedule that hopefully is a balance between giving you appropriate information for you to make an informed decision. So what you'll be voting on September 4th, in addition to what's in here, is the amended schedule that reflects that change, which, just off the cuff, I think, and then we're probably going to have to really get staff working hard to put together sufficient detail for some meetings in September to present to you. We'll start off with a high-level list, but we'd ask that you wait until you get all the information before making any judgments. And then that would precipitate, again, I need to check with SPLOST staff on this, perhaps an October vote on the list of projects with the submissions of the approved projects happening before the deadline, perhaps November.
So my motion would be to approve the schedule as drafted and direct staff to develop an alternate schedule that they'll present to us in September.
We'll present to you next week.
Will present to us in August.
Second.
At the work session. Okay, we have a motion, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Are we there yet?
You know how I get sometimes.
Okay. Item number 10 is a request
Being around on campus.
of W&A Engineering for the Athens Mill project. And would you go ahead and read the ordinance for us, Mr. Behrman, before we get started?
An ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to rezoning a parcel of land comprising approximately 18.174 acres located at 355 Oneta Street from RM2I PD, Mixed Density Residential and Industrial Plan Development, to CNI PD, Commercial Neighborhood and Industrial Plan Development, and for other purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Behrman. Ms. Lincoln, Ms. Wright, I don't know which one of you would like to present this, which I know is CDO.
I'll start. Yeah, so this initially came to us in our July meeting, and there was relatively little discussion or opposition to it in the agenda session, and I didn't foresee any controversy in this request to rezone this project as staff had actually recommended to commercial neighborhood, which is a common zoning designation for projects adjacent to neighborhoods. When we gave Creature Comforts a little bit of public assistance to, economic development assistance to locate in this project, they kind of took up all the allotted commercial space in the initial, I think it was RM2 designation. And as has been presented, the economy's changed. Residential development here is not especially affordable, or even moderate income residential development is not feasible in this project and never was part of the discussion. This is an extremely expensive project. The primary goal is to rehabilitate and preserve a historic mill complex. And it's very expensive to outfit that with a bunch of individual apartments. If the only feasibility would be high-end luxury, probably student-oriented apartments, which we don't want to see in this area. So there have been some concerns about the breadth of uses under that CN designation, and we had a little meeting with the representatives of the developer and representatives of the neighborhood and representatives of those who own property in the Oneta Street area. And we came up with an exclusion of a handful of uses. So this CDO is to support the rezoning to commercial neighborhood, and to include the already requested additional uses, which are indoor recreation, event space, and light manufacturing. Those are the ones we already approved a year or so ago to allow for Creature Comforts to move in there. The uses to be excluded are hostel, hotels, vehicle repair, laundry facilities, schools, personal care homes, nursing homes, hospitals, medical centers, cemeteries, and mortuaries. And the vision is that this will be a bustling, mixed-use commercial center that will very much directly serve the surrounding neighborhood and bring new business, new folks into the neighborhood to experience this little chunk of Athens history and Athens industrial past. So I want to go ahead and move that we adopt this rezoning with the CDO as outlined in the language that the attorney presented.
I second.
A motion is second. Any further discussion? Okay. Ms.
Yeah, I've
Vaughn.
got a few things. Thank you.
Dickerson.
So in just the last few days, as I've been working back through this, there was sort of a revelation that came. Part of it was talking to the developer and part was talking to planning director today. But I guess I just want to make sure that all of my colleagues are on the same page that I am, and that is understanding that this PD is asking for flexibility to reduce residential bedrooms in the development, but maintain the right to eliminate those altogether if they desire. That's what this is asking for. So from what I understand, talking to the planning director, the developer would not be found in violation of the PD if he decided not to build the residential portion of the project. So the decision that we're making here tonight is really not is not whether we're in favor of reducing residential, but essentially an all-out elimination of that residential. And so some of the concerns I have, and I've shared these, I'll speak a little more about that in a minute with the developer. So facts and issues, just some things that might be interesting to some of my colleagues who sometimes fall on a different side of this issue. The project's going to increase property values in that area, which is likely going to increase gentrification. By approving the project, we're making zoning decisions piecemeal, removing residentially zoned in-town property from our inventory, which is not consistent with our comp plan, and which encourages higher density in town. Which our comp plan encourages higher density in town and discourages sprawl. By lessening our housing stock in areas like this, we're intentionally putting pressure on other areas of our community to make up the slack, areas that aren't as abundant with transportation alternatives as this one is. In fact, we'll be making a decision soon on a plan to spend millions of dollars on bike and ped infrastructure in this same area. But this project is going to be decreasing residential users of this infrastructure, as many of the commercial businesses are likely to become destinations, attracting people from all of our community and beyond, and becoming more auto-centric in nature. With that said, the property was originally zoned commercial back 20 some odd years ago, and it was rezoned residential 20 years ago for a development that never came to fruition. So changing back to commercial isn't unreasonable given that there are other commercial uses in the area, and there's some history behind, some of the businesses around there concerned about having residents come in and then complain about the noise and et cetera. Of course, there's a train that goes through there. And I would imagine there's probably enough support behind the rail for this to pass tonight. So, however, with that said, the developer has not made a decision yet regarding the residential piece of the development. So I think we should take advantage of establishing a dialogue with him as he evaluates whether or not he's going to build any residential housing in this development. We still have some tools in our toolbox, some that we have not used, that might help address some of the workforce housing needs that we have in our community. Commissioner Hamby and I met this morning with the developer, Mr. Crump, to discuss the project. We shared our interest in the development of in-town workforce housing, which we're in desperate need of. The developer indicated he is interested in having further conversations and has voluntarily agreed to discuss how workforce housing might fit within this development. Therefore, I would like to offer the following substitute motion to include Commissioner Link's CDO language that restricts commercial neighborhood zoning uses. And that motion is the developer agrees to develop a plan within 24 months, but no later than October 1st of 2020, to address workforce housing at the Millworks site, working with the Georgia Initiative for Community Housing and the Athens Land Bank Authority to identify potential incentives to support such housing.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Mr. Herod.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess, I've thought a lot about this project, and I'm kind of torn in two directions. So on the one hand, I do very much want to see this historic property saved. I don't want to see it crumble into dust. But on the other hand, economic considerations are not something that we're supposed to take into consideration when looking at a rezoning. And this does not fit with the future land use map, precisely because it does, we've spent so much time talking about how we want density close to the urban hub as a way of preserving our green belt, because the more we downzone residential property in this part of town, the greater the pressure. People are coming here, so we need to put them somewhere. And the more we downzone residential property in this part of the community, the more pressure we put on our greenbelt. So, but I also agree with Commissioner Dickerson. I can count the votes. I think there are the votes behind the rail to approve this. So I appreciate her, what she's offering here, which I would support. One final thing, though, I would say, I just find it amazing that there is so much prejudice against students. I find it amazing that somebody would say, we don't want students in this part of town. Students have every right to live in this part of town than any other part of town.
Mr. Hamby.
Sure. And I think what this substitute motion does is it keeps the door open for that discussion about what type of residential could go here. But it does something that we haven't done as a community. It brings some partners to GIC is doing it, bringing partners to the table to say, and developers as part of that conversation, what is it going to take? Why, finally, once and for all? What do you, developer, need in order to make this an affordable housing or workforce housing? What do we as a county have to offer? What do our housing partners have to offer? So I think having this in the substitute motion allows for that conversation to happen, and I'm glad it's in there, and I look forward to seeing how that progresses.
Mr. Gertz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess a handful of points and maybe a question even for Brad Griffin, if he's available. And maybe while we're waiting for Brad, one of the things that I've noted about this property, which is just globally true, and that is that every property is unique and has some contours that are specific to it. And that's no more true than here, where you've got a set of 120-year-old brick structures. And we've even found in our own array of building projects in the county that when we're trying to work with historic structures, we find ourselves in among our most challenged situations. You know, I think about the Costa building right next to us, or I think about the Murmur Trestle being good examples of that it's just challenging when you're trying to make something fit. And Brad is here, and so really this property has a couple components. It has the old brick completed hardscape, and then really there's a greenfield element of this property generally. Brad, when the greenfield component is developed, will that have to return to us?
Yes.
All right, so we already are certainly going to get another kind of bite at this apple, so to speak, and I just want that to be clear to everybody. You know, and I certainly support the GET goals, and I've been having lots of conversations with our local affordable housing partners and some folks from out of town too. I think what is going to have to be true broadly across the county is that we're just going to have some tools, some incentives, and some local dollars at the table when we talk about developing future affordable housing. Just as I look around the country, I was reading something last week about Lawrence, Kansas, and they found this incredible slowdown in affordable housing simply because of this dramatic cost in building construction costs. The article mentioned that there was about a 38% increase from the start of 2017 to right where we sit today, just in framing lumber. And that had put the brakes on things in Lawrence, and what they found is that they really had to bring big local dollars to the table if they wanted some affordable housing. Lawrence is elected to put $1 million of local funds a year into affordable housing through a sales tax referendum there, and that really parallels what all the affordable housing folks locally are saying too. We're going to have to bring a lot to the table, and then the development community is suggesting, you know, some incentives are going to be what sort of will be married with that. You hear about density bonuses quite a bit, for example. So I guess I want to hear the language again from Commissioner Dickerson. I just want to be clear what she's specifically asking for in terms of compelling or requesting the developer to do something. And if you could read that again, that'd be helpful.
Sure. And you know, obviously, this is a voluntary thing. It's not anything that we can, it's not enforceable, but it's in good faith, knowing that he has other, you know, projects perhaps in the area as well as phases of this project that he'll have to come back for approval on. So when we spoke with Mr. Crump this morning, what we wrote up was the developer agrees to develop a plan within 24 months, but no later than October 1st of 2020 to address workforce housing at the Millworks site, working with the Georgia Initiative for Community Housing and the Athens Land Bank Authority to identify potential incentives to support such housing.
So in my hearing of your reading, you know, what I'm hearing suggested is that there's a conversation and the developer will say, here's what it would take to do affordable housing on this site. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and I've got something to add, but I'll wait till you.
Okay. Madam Mayor, as a point of privilege, could I ask either the property owner or developer representative to kind of address whether this would be kind of
Yes,
in
I
conformance
think-
with their opportunities?
Kelly, if you don't mind, we've got 2 or 3 other people that want to speak, and so they may have questions that the developer can answer too, so let's wait.
Okay.
And let them speak, and then we'll do that. Ms. Wright?
Kelly covered exactly what I was looking for. I was looking for Commissioner Dickerson's restating that input part, and so that was my question.
Yeah, I needed that too. Ms. Dickerson?
Yeah, I just
you
wanted to point out, we do have some funds set aside. I think we're somewhere close to $300,000 now in the special revenue for affordable housing that we created, the fund we created. The other thing that we need to remember, one of the tools we have, and we mentioned that, and this came up during the Mitchell Street project, and it came up in the discussion we had today with the developers, you know, the mayor and commission have the ability to direct taxes that we collect from these big projects during our budget year. So, you know, if this project, let's just play it out, this project was going to create, our portion was going to be $200,000 a year, then that money, the mayor and commission could direct towards the special revenue fund to support such things as what we're talking about.
Ms. Neesmith?
I appreciate what Commissioner Dickerson's trying to do here, but I don't believe the wording of that is voluntary. I believe we've created a condition for this zoning, which means that in 24 months, he has to provide a report, or he's violated the zoning. Is that right, Bill?
You would have to Provide a
He would
report.
have to provide the report.
But the report could be
We can't.
almost anything.
Yeah, that's true. Well, also, she had some conditions about that, too. He has to collaborate with certain organizations to create this report. I have concerns about that. I don't think that's an appropriate condition for rezoning.
Mr. Hamby.
See, I do think it's an appropriate condition, because if we're serious about workforce housing, y'all, we're doing a favor here. It's a planned development. And, we voted on this years ago with the understanding that there would be a mixed-use residential component to it. So now, it's coming back to us that they can build up to 268 bedrooms, but there's no, they're not going to build 268 bedrooms. But to get the project moving and to keep it on the table, the prospect of having some residential here is something that we ought to be aiming for. I mean, we're doing them a huge favor. We've already done one a huge favor by investing $500,000 in creature comforts to get the project kick-started over there. That's why I voted to help give that money, to get the project kick-started over there so it can get something going. So I don't think it's too much to ask to sit down at a table with our housing partners and with GIC and say, Mr. Developer, what does it take for you to help make, what do we need to do to help make this happen, and what can you do to make it happen? And I don't think that's much to ask at all for what we're giving up here. We're giving up 400, possibly 400 bedrooms out of our stock of housing that was very clear by some who were arguing a few weeks ago that we need in this community. So I think we ought to, this is a way to continue that conversation about how we develop the workforce housing and what tools are needed that we may not be recognizing or that GIC is working on. So.
Okay, we would want Mr. Crump to come to the, Mr. Williams, the reason I asked Mr. Crump, because he's the principal and he's the one that can make commitments, but come ahead, maybe you can answer questions for them.
I think Mr. Crump can throw something at me if I do bad, but I think I can make a commitment and speak on his behalf, because one of the benefits we have is I've known Russ Crump for 25 years now. So he did meet with the commissioners this morning, and he did tell them that he would work with the community to try to figure out what it would take to do workforce housing. What this board needs to realize is that as a function and as a part of the creature comforts deal that was originally put in there, creature comforts optioned the second phase, the greenfield part of this development. So what we can do, what I'm willing to do, and what I'm willing to help Russ do, is in the spirit of the condition, to go through the exercise of meeting with those people that you're talking about, come up with a plan that would have workforce housing on that second phase, even though it we can't control whether it can be done or not, because Creature would have to give up their option on the property for us to do it. But then we could present a report to this board that would say, this is how many units you could fit on it, this is the cost, this is what the available options for funding of that is out there, this is what a bank will finance, this is how much money the county would have to commit to this project for it to be able to be rented for $500 a bed, or $500 a unit, which was roughly what the workforce housing number is. So if this commission would like for us to do that, W&A Engineering and Russ, who is doing it, I believe would be doing a service, like you said, to the community to help you guys understand what it would take to put 200 beds back there. And whether that's a $2 million commitment by the county in cash or whether that's a $10 million commitment by the county in cash, I think we can figure that out in the next few years. And Creature may not decide to move forward on their option. We may have a site plan that'll work. We may be back in front of you and y'all may say, we want to fund this $5 million or we want to do that if you'll build this and you'll rent control this to workforce housing. I mean, that's a possibility. I don't know. Bill will have to tell you whether or not the motion is appropriate to add that condition to the zoning. What I can tell you is that I know Russ, I know me, and I'm standing before you tonight telling you that one way or another we'll come up with a report that will tell this commission what it will take to develop those, whether or not Ms. Dickerson's motion gets put on there or not, because Russ told you he was going to do that, and that's what will happen. Whether or not he's got to spend money or not spend money to do that, it will happen. So if Bill feels like it's appropriate, as long as it doesn't affect our ability to move forward with the commercial space that's in the current warehouses, that's within that footprint, that what we are proposing tonight, are asking for, then we will get this done for you sometime in the next 24 months. And I'll be back before this commission with Russ, and we'll present to you our findings in whatever format you want them presented, whether it's at a work session or here, to figure out what the community will have to bear in order to put forth workforce or affordable housing.
Ms. Wright, did you want to ask something of John or?
Well, no, my question has more related to the GIC report. But
Can I move
so go
to Ms.
ahead.
Ms. Link, and do you have anything to ask of
Well,
Mr. Williams?
I mean, what we're essentially asking is to apply an inclusionary housing policy to a project kind of on the fly behind the rail. We do have this workforce housing report that's pushing 3 years old now, I think. And that was one of the many recommendations that came out of that report, but it hasn't been pursued. And this kind of came up a year ago when we approved a 6 times density increase for a project on Mitchell Street downtown. And there was no real interest in this commission to have that kind of discussion then. I don't have any opposition to a report. In fact, I'm really eager to hear that report, and I'm hoping that such a report could maybe foment some actual policy that could be applied to all projects.
Sure.
It's just a shame that we didn't get to this 2 or 3 years ago when it first started coming up in discussion, and it's a shame it couldn't have been applied to some of these many projects that have popped up in the past couple of years. I want to thank Williams and Associates for being open to this idea. And I've always been interested in that Phase 2 property because it would be an ideal, fresh, clean, blank slate to develop whatever might possibly pop up there, with whatever materials are available to make it a feasible and affordable project. The buildings that are there now, I understand that, affordable housing in those buildings is not feasible. But I am interested in seeing that kind of report, and I'm interested in sooner rather than later having the kind of conversation where we can have this conversation long before these things even hit the Planning Commission.
Ms. Wright.
They might have questions for Mr. Williams. I'll yield
Okay.
to that.
I'm just going to start at this end, Jerry, because I didn't see the hands go up.
I have a question for Mr. Williams, but I wish I had instant replay on Commissioner Link's comments just now, because she said we are something about inclusionary zoning. We're not doing anything, and that's why I'm concerned about this amendment being misinterpreted. We're not requiring inclusionary zoning in any way.
Not requiring anything.
And, if they're going to do the report, I'm happy to support your motion, Commissioner Dickerson, since they're so willing to do it anyway. So, and as long as we know that they're not committing to do anything but a report, period, we got to be sure we understand the expectations here.
Exactly.
Well, and I think this, Madam Mayor, allows us to not be critical of a process 5 years down the road. We're doing something about it now. We're starting that conversation now. You wish it would have started 5 years ago. Well, it didn't. But we can pass this tonight without this amendment to it, and we're going to wait another 5 years until another project comes along, and we'll be back 5 years from now saying, well, I wish we would have talked about this 5 years from now. We can keep that circle going, or we can stop it and do something about it now and have that conversation, see what can work with developers and work with this community to get something going, and see what incentives may be out there or what the developer needs.
Ms. Terry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would love to see some affordable housing on this particular site, but that's not my overarching issue. My overarching issue is we're removing the residential aspect from an in-town area, which is then going to put greater pressure on other places. And if the developer, I'm going to support the motion, but for me, it's not what the price point is on the residential. It's the fact that we'll be removing the residential or a significant portion of it. And if it were market rate for retirees, I wouldn't have a problem with that. So I just want it to be clearly understood. At least I don't want to speak for anybody else, but my position is more about the removal of a significant amount of potential residential spaces, not necessarily shoehorning some workforce housing in there, although I think that this part of town is well suited to that.
Any further discussion? Any questions?
I don't have a question for Mr. Williams, but I did want to
I think
add,
they're
and
through,
maybe
Don.
this would be a substitute to the current motion on the floor. It seems to me that we're trying to ask a specific project that's before us to tackle the hard work and all the process, and that's why Commissioner Dickerson knows so much about it, because she and Commissioner Bell have been studying the GIC process. But I think it'd be more appropriate if we had this report 24 hours after the mayor, 24 months after the mayor and commission has accepted the GIC report, and we have made our stance on that. We're asking them to do something ahead of us even knowing what this process is. We have two commissioners who know it very well, but the rest of us have yet to see the report. The report has yet to be accepted by us, or the steps that would be really more appropriate to happen by this body before an entity tries to put it together.
Okay, Mr. Bierman, we are way down in the weeds now. Is this an appropriate condition to put on this zoning issue?
Well, it's, in the time I've been here, there's never been a condition like this, but it is a condition to file a report that could simply say one thing on it. It could say the land is subject to a creature comforts option, or the land has been sold to creature comforts.
Yeah.
That could be the end of the story. Or it could be, we can develop this, but the government needs to provide $5 million. So, you might get something valuable out of it, but then again, you might not. And it's very unusual, but I think it could be attached as a condition to this ordinance.
Well, it occurred to me that Creature Comforts could exercise that option tomorrow, too, and it would be a moot point. So.
Well, it actually wouldn't, because they're having several different phases to this, and there's, in the report, the report to the Planning Commission, a representative, Scott, I believe Scott Haynes, said that, there's possibles of residential in buildings B, C, and D. So there's, there is, I think this helps us address some of the questions, like Andy's. It'll address the question about taking away the housing in general, but also the workforce housing. But it also, the motion, has the conversation, so to speak, around our housing partners, around the people that were at the table with GIC. This is an opportunity for us to see something, and I don't think it's too much to ask, since it's a planned development, and like we've always talked about with planned developments, I'm glad that redoing the building. I'm glad Creature Comforts over there, and I'm glad that there's going to be some commercial interest in there. But there was always, that was the whole point of it, but the whole point of it also was to have some residential component to it, along with all that commercial activity. So now they're back before us asking for a change, and the question still has to be asked, okay, so the change is lowering the residential part of it that we know that we need, because Andy and several others at a previous meeting has said that. So if we're giving that up, what are we getting in return? A small little conversation around the table that may or may not produce something good is not too much to ask.
I'm not arguing against it. I'm just
I know
I'm trying to make sure
that
that everybody is aware of all of the potentials and possible unintended consequences.
Right. And the developer seemed very sincere about wanting to have that conversation this morning. So.
And Ms. Wright, were you trying to change the
I was throwing it
motions on
out
the
there.
floor?
I didn't get any bites, kind of dead throw there.
Well,
I could call the question.
Well, if I could just answer that. So GIC has not, we're actually in the process of beginning and developing that report, so we've still got another 9 months or so. We're given 24 months. It may be the conversation's done in 6 months. I'm not really sure. We just didn't want to put a really tight time frame on this. Envision Athens also has a conversation going on with developers about this. So again, I think what Commissioner Hamby said about, starting the conversation, we're not hurting anything. I did speak with Housing and Community Development Director Deborah Lonan today about this, and she had the same opinion. It's not hurting anything. If the attorney was comfortable with it and the commission was comfortable with it, she thought it would be a great step for the GIT committee. Now, yeah, I will say, I'm not necessarily expecting, and maybe I should change the wording a little bit, but that they develop the plan. The hope is that they will come to the table and we together will develop a plan about how we can address that. And we do need some reality checks about what it's going to take to do this, because we haven't had those conversations. So, I mean, that's what we need. That's the traction we need for this to go forward, so.
Well, Ms. Wright has called the question, and so I think we need a roll call vote.
Madam Mayor, I think technically we need to vote on calling the question before we vote on the question.
Maybe you can
I have one quick question.
Rhetorical call.
So Commissioner Dickerson's is an amendment to the CDO that has the exclusions on
Yeah,
it, the
it
excluded
includes your
uses?
CDO. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay. Do we do you want to withdraw your call the question? Let me just call.
It
call
wasn't
for the vote.
official. It needed
Okay.
a second, and
Okay.
I think we're there.
We have a motion and a second on the floor, and it's an amendment to the CDO.
Substitute motion.
It's a substitute motion that amends the CDO. And so I think we need a roll call vote, just to be sure, Ms. Spratlin.
Yes.
Parker? Yes. Gertz?
Yes.
Link?
Yes.
Wright?
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Neesmith? Yes. Hamby?
Yes.
Bell?
Yes.
Harrod?
Yes.
10 yes, 0 no.
I like those unanimous votes. Okay.
Congratulations.
Brad.
Item number 11 is the Boley Drive, and this is approval of the pump station and force main that was addressed at the podium tonight. And we have a CDO by Commissioner Gertz. Would you like to explain your CDO, Mr. Gertz?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I appreciate it. We've talked a little bit about this site, given a couple of the elements of it, that there was a rezoning on the site, and it also includes a former piece of unified government property. It's immediately adjacent to sewer, but that sewer is just across the loop. So to reach that stub point, we're essentially going to have to just jump a line across the loop, or underneath the loop, kind of more accurately. The other thing that's important about this property, though, in terms of our longer-term conversations, is that this property sits right on the edge of what we've identified in our public utility service delivery plan as one of two public health areas in the county in which there are clusters of aging septic tanks. There's one here, and there's one kind of off Davis Road as well. There's been just a touchy area because we are very conscientious about not wanting inappropriate new development to create additional environmental pressure. But I think we collectively very much want to be conscious about taking opportunities that we might be able to take advantage of to pull some of those aging septic systems offline if that's necessary. This may be a spot where that's a prospect, but that prospect, I believe, should return to the mayor and commission before it's approved. So the commission-defined option would be approving this pump station, but also making explicit that use of this pump station by other adjacent properties would have to return to the mayor and commission. And so the text just reads, Mayor and Commission approve a connection to the unified government sanitary sewer system by means of a private sewage pumping station and public force main to provide wastewater service to property located at 215 Boley Drive. And then secondly, use of this pump station and associated force main by additional properties shall be subject to approval by the mayor and commission. And I will make a motion to that effect.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion. Lee Smith and then Harrod.
Yes, ma'am. This idea about a negative pressure or vacuum pump is interesting, and I know virtually nothing about it. And we know that this is a very sensitive area for many reasons, including the fact that it feeds into right where we take water out of the river to drink. So I'm wondering if maybe we might want to ask staff to give us a report on the feasibility of this alternate pumping method before we make this decision. So I'm going to make a substitute motion that we delay this for 30 days and ask staff to give us a report about this other pumping technology and whether it's appropriate or not.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second on substitute motion. Is there any discussion on the substitute motion?
Madam Mayor, I'll just say, kind of given my understanding of the timeline, I'm happy to withdraw the initial motion and kind of pursue this 30-day delay.
Mr. Harrod.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Since I was second to speak, Commissioner Neesmith beat me to the punch. I also am interested. I don't know anything about this technology. The one thing I'll say about Commissioner Gertz's motion, I know that when we talked about this at the agenda setting meeting, I mean, this is a very sensitive area, and as I mentioned, sewer lines drive development, and this is one particular area where, although we have some issues with septic tanks, and so I can see the benefits to providing this kind of sewer, we do need to be careful. And so I appreciate the aspect of his CDO about all other tie-ons to this sewer need to be approved by the Mayor and Commission. The only slight wrinkle I will say to that is that once the infrastructure is there, it is, of course, much easier for a future Mayor and Commission to allow that to happen. That's all.
So we have a motion on the floor because Mr. Gertz withdrew his. Mr. Neesmith is on the floor. Did we get a second?
Yes.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Item number 12 is the lease agreement with Advantage Behavioral Health Systems for 250 North Avenue. And Mr. Neesmith, Mr. Hamby have CDO. So which one of y'all wants to
No,
address this?
actually, it's Sharon's, it's Commissioner
Oh,
Dickerson.
it's Dickerson, Neesmith. Dickerson, Neesmith, and Hamby is what was on the top.
Yeah.
She said she would break my legs if I
No. Well, you guys may remember, this is a building that we own, and we direct, when you own a piece of property, you can direct people to use your services, and that's all I'm asking is that the leasee use the solid waste and recycling collection services of Athens-Clarke County government because they are competitive at that location, and so we should throw the business to our own service. So that's all I'm asking in the CDO.
Okay.
Can I make that a motion?
I'm making a motion, yes.
I'll second it. And then if I say so, I'm on the board of Advantage Behavioral. I think this is a very reasonable condition.
Any further discussion? Okay.
Should I recuse myself, Bill?
I don't think so. I'm sorry, you were asking Bill. Have a motion second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Item number 13 is the Whitehall Road, South Milledge Avenue improvements, and it's a bid award. You have a motion or
So
discussion?
moved.
Second.
Have a motion second, any discussion? Mr. Harrod?
I mean, I'm all in favor of this, as I was one of the people that argued vociferously for putting this on the SPLOST. So this is just simply to award a bid to build the roundabout at the bottom of South Milledge and Whitehall. And as far as I'm concerned, it can't get built quickly enough because I think it will really help the traffic congestion out there.
Well, can we very quickly vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I was.
Okay, number 14 is South Lumpkin Street at Baxter Street, and this is approval of a preliminary plan. And would any commissioner like to?
I can highlight it. It's kind of at the intersection of Commissioner Bell and I's
I'll give you half of it.
campus. Okay. It's the right turning lane, I believe, where the new construction is, will disappear, and it just takes out another way that traffic has to wait for pedestrians, and they get impatient. And then the pedestrians get impatient too. And I believe Manager Williams said that was it. And so it's an improvement to that intersection and the scramble that is there for the pedestrians to all go at once and have the traffic wait their turn. And so it's an improvement, and they're timing it as they would for that area.
I'll give us a motion.
And, yeah, motion to approve.
Okay.
Shaking her head.
Have a motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And number 15 is the red light running photo enforcement system, and this is the location at Highway 29 at Hull Road. We have an ordinance, Mr. Fairman.
I do. An ordinance to amend the FY 2018 annual operating and capital budget for Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, so as to provide funding to the police department from the red light camera program fund balance to fund the reconditioning of the system at West Broad Street and Alps Road and for other purposes.
Motion for approval, Madam Mayor.
Motion for approval.
I have a second bit of comment.
Have a second. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I wanted to once again appreciate the fact that staff did reevaluate the use of the existing location and noted that there were no red light related crashes for 2 years. So obviously it works. And I'm looking forward to it working really well in its new location, so.
Yes, sir.
I also want to thank Mayor and Commission for asking us to take a second look at this, and I think this is a good example of us going to a more data-driven selection of how we allocate scarce resources.
Have a motion to have a second.
Well, I was going to say, I'm very glad we're taking out the red light camera at West Broad and Apps Road for a lot of reasons. Several reasons.
There'll be future crashes.
One of your suppliers is near this intersection, so just remember.
I wasn't driving those cars there.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a
I
second?
had a second.
Oh, you second, okay. Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, number 16 is the Bishop Park Master Plan Revision. And I asked Mr. Williams if he could have staff basically just briefly go over this for the benefit of the public, because when you say plan revision, they don't know what we're talking about, so.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that opportunity, and I've asked Assistant Manager Hiss to address that.
Okay. I will quickly go over kind of highlights of what this plan hopes to accomplish over the years. What was already discussed by one of our residents was the comprehensive stormwater improvements that's needed and that's planned in this master plan. Also, some new entry points, pedestrian entry points, some streetscaping. I think we all agree that certainly along Hawthorne Avenue needs some help, and sooner rather than later. So streetscaping and pedestrian entry points is going to be a part of this beautification. What you would see, the parking lot is old, confusing, and can accommodate more parking, quite frankly. So it's going to be redesigned. The current plan would net out an additional 56 spots and another 28 on-street spaces on Sunset Drive, but that's just in the planning phases at this point. We'd also reconfigure the kind of confusing network of pedestrian paths to make them a little bit more definitive in terms of half-mile loops and quarter-mile loops within the property boundaries. The kind of capstone project, so to speak, would be the expansion of the existing gymnastics facility. Right now it's a 5,000 square foot building. The plan calls for expanding to a 15,000 square foot building, adequate to support gymnastics going forward. Also, we'd be able to establish other wellness activities within that facility, move our administration offices out of the unsightly trailer that's at the park and move it into that facility as well. And also, that facility would also be configured to accommodate a splash pad and also potentially an indoor teaching pool as part of that facility. So anyway, there's a lot of possibilities in that space, and really we're just kind of earmarking what that would look like and how that would fit within the parameters of the park. A couple other things: the current much maligned undercover the tennis pavilion could be either retrofitted or a new building could be built for creating an event pavilion. Of course, that's a home of the Athens Farmers Market. A lot of possibilities with what that new pavilion facility could look like, or that retrofitted facility. Some general of removing of fences, especially in Field 1. Field 1 would be the one that is closest to the existing basketball courts. Removing some fences there. We're in a desperate need, and what we've found from our programming is more just open green space to accommodate just a wide variety of activities that seem to unfold on a daily basis. So more space for that, and we wouldn't lose our ability to program those fields for softball and other types of activities as well. And finally, the basketball courts, due to what we previously start off with was the stormwater amenities. They could be relocated to what is currently the old barbecue shelter, if you want to call it that. Anyways, that'd be relocated to that area. The it would be a new basketball facilities. We talked to a lot of the users of of the basketball courts. They just want a new facility that looks good and would love to have consideration for it to be covered. The location of those courts was really secondary in their opinion. But that's really the high-level bullet points of what this plan would accomplish over the next many years.
Thank you, Mr. Hiss. Those 5 little words we're about to vote on cover a lot, and that's why I wanted our citizens to get to understand what we're doing. Do I have a motion?
I'll move that we accept the proposal, the master plan.
Mr. Neesmith?
I'm waiting.
We have a motion, a second. Now discussion.
Yes. It seems to me like the whole gymnastics wellness center thing is kind of, very fuzzy. And I wonder out loud if the existing footprint, or maybe even the existing building, couldn't be retrofitted to house the leisure services office and the wellness center, and maybe even an indoor pool, without building a 15,000 square foot gymnasium. As you've heard me say, there's nothing that says that gymnasium needs to be in Bishop Park. It could be somewhere else, and we could use this as an opportunity to have a centerpiece for a park that we need on the west side. And so I'll make a substitute motion that we adopt this recommendation without the proposed new gymnastics and wellness center of 15,000 square feet.
We have a substitute on the floor. Is there a second?
I had a comment.
I'll second.
I have a second for discussion.
The comment that I wanted to make was that my understanding is when we're approving the master plans and revisions for the master plans is that we're approving locations of items, whether it's the stormwater goes here, a big building's going to be here, the pool is going to be here, and that's what we're accepting. We're not nailed down to function of the inside, but it's more a matter of having the places, what's been identified here in location. Obviously, a basketball court, that functions there, but the ones that are in this in particular, that structure, the structure could be built, but that doesn't mean it has to be the gymnastics. That's how I'm voting for this, because that's my understanding of it.
Let's see if anybody else needs to speak, since anybody else before needs to speak. Mr. Kurtz.
I would just sort of echo some of Commissioner Wright's thoughts. I see these master plans as generally placeholders. I'm certainly very supportive of the idea of having more leisure services space kind of on the western edge of the county. But there are no funds attached to this. All we're suggesting is that, here is a revision concept for this park with some spaces where things could be renovated. I think when we, get down to the brass tacks of saying, how do we want to allocate those SPLOST dollars, or, how do we want to direct staff to spend some capital funds, that's when we get into this next question.
Ms. Link.
I'm certainly open and supportive of the idea of more recreational facilities on the west side. And I think a gymnastics center on the west side, would be a great way to kickstart that. But again, I do see this as a placeholder. And I know we get these master plans before us from time to time for amendments, and all of these little individual items in it will be coming before us as individual projects for approval. What I'd kind of suggest is maybe a SPLOST project be proposed to find a location on the west side and propose a gymnastics center or some other recreational facility, because there is a desperate need out there. So, Jerry, I hope there's some plans for that.
Yes, well, we are saying that we will build, or a placeholder for a 15,000 square foot building, which will be a gymnastics and wellness center and office space. That's what this proposal says. So it's much more than a placeholder. It's a big placeholder. It's a 15,000 square foot building. And of course, this proposal is going to have to be funded by something, probably the next SPLOST. What I want us to do is consider not including the 15,000 square foot building in this proposal, making this proposal less expensive to fulfill through whatever money we get through SPLOST, and freeing up money so that we can use that money on the west side and perhaps build a new gymnasium center out there as a centerpiece. That's what I'm proposing.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, we have a substitute on the floor. So let's do a roll call, Ms. Bratton.
Naismith,
Yes.
Hamby,
Yes.
Bell,
What am I voting on?
Substitute motion.
Thank you.
Jim.
Yes.
Harrod,
Yes.
Dickerson,
Yes.
Parker. No. Gertz,
No.
Link,
Yes.
Wright,
Nope.
Bailey.
No.
6 yes, 4 no.
So your substitute's passed. Okay. Item number 17 is the Park Facilities Improvement, which is a SPLOST, 2011 SPLOST project, and then sub-projects. And again, for our voters and citizens out there, it means nothing to them. So I've asked staff to give us a little bit of a briefing on what this is.
Yeah, I've asked Assistant Manager Hiss, who works with Leisure Services more closely, to relay that to you.
So this is a series of sub-projects within the SPLOST Project 16 that we're asking for approval. Number one, the first project is sub-project number 13, is some additional park entry signs. We've, at least staff has received positive feedback about some of the redesigns of what they look like. So this would install 2 new proposed signs at Sandy Creek Park and Bishop Park. The next one would be, so this would be extra money to allow that to happen. Sub-project number 15 would be to allow us to continue our work at Satterfield Park. Currently, we're renovating field number 4, and now this would allow us to do some renovations and some grading and some soil amendments and so forth to ball field number 5. So we'd be making a lot of progress there at Satterfield with those additional funds. Also, sub-project number 17, we have a plan, a replacement plan for bridges and boardwalks at various parks and facilities. This would be a project to allocate funding for some fiberglass trail bridges at various trails at Sandy Creek Park. Sub-project number 18 is for Ben Burton Park. This would be to construct a pavilion and restroom facility at that park, accommodate 30 to 40 patrons in that type of facility. Sub-project 19 is, sub-project 19 and 20 is going back just a little bit. When we adopted the FY19 budget, we started, this is couple of the projects that were in the CIP that we are now funding through the SPLOST program. So this is really replacement of CIP funds. So sub-project 19 is replacement of various parks equipment, picnic tables, barbecue grills, ice machines, trash cans, et cetera. Probably the biggest expenditure is replacing our 22-year-old showmobile that has seen better days and, quite frankly, is almost unusable at this point without a replacement. And sub-project 20 is, again, talking about that CIP replacement. These are funds that we've traditionally had in our CIP. And again, this is for scoreboard replacements, windscreens, some hazardous trees or unhealthy tree removal, ball field netting, playground repairs, things of that nature. So those are what all these sub-projects are for.
Thank you. And I'll point out to y'all that this does include sub-project 17 through 20, which are on the longer report back here, but somehow we didn't get it on the shorter agenda. So, listen.
I make a motion that we accept these, and would you guys please work on that Ben Burton Pavilion and bathroom as soon as possible so we can all go out there and celebrate? I'd appreciate it.
Have a motion, Mariah, second. Okay, a motion, a second.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to keep up. I'm sorry, maybe I'm a year or two behind. Maybe Blaine or someone can tell me, did we ever resolve or fix that problem in Bishop Park at the tennis pavilion with the sunlight coming in the morning and really ruining the produce?
We've had ongoing conversations with the Athens Farmers Market and trying to create a device that would work appropriately. And I'm not sure if we've really come up with a really great solution quite yet.
There's no problem. So I know funding was a problem with that. Is funding for that in here?
It is not, because we really don't have a design that we have, and there's a cost associated with it, but no, we just don't have that ready for this type of project yet. It's just not ready for funding. We still need to have some more conversations, and we're still looking at other options.
I think they're waiting for you to come up with a design.
I
But
think-
okay,
yeah.
that's enough.
Well,
That's enough.
We've given some ideas. We've asked them to vet it through some various, their engineers too. This needs to be a partnership arrangement, and we've been going back and forth in some discussions.
Thank you very much.
A shade structure sufficient in size could act as a sail. And so we asked them if they could have a structural engineer propose a solution that is safe and effective. And that's sort of the dialogue that's been going
Very
on.
good. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Item number 19 is our government operations report.
18, Madam Mayor.
Oh, excuse me.
Landfill.
I skipped one. Construction of landfill phase B cell 1A and 1B, and it's the award of construction contract. Have a motion?
Motion to approve A and B,
Have a motion? Do we have a
1A
second?
and B.
I'll second that.
Have a motion, and a second, any discussion? All in favor?
I have some discussion. I know this is an absolutely necessary expansion, but I have consternation about the fact that we have to expand our landfill when we're not taking, further measures to reduce our waste through things like bag bans, styrofoam bans. So I just hope that that will be on the table very, very soon. New research says that the decomposition of plastic bags is the greatest, it produces gas that greatly increases climate change. So there are even more reasons to consider that bag ban. So I'm hoping that sometime soon we'll be talking about that.
Any further discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Just point out a couple things, because there has been a lot in the news about plastics and whatnot. Just to remind everybody, plastics make up about 7% by weight of what ends up in the landfill. I realize we do volume, but, and of that plastic, of that 7%, 80% of that is recyclable. And Clarke County does have a really good recycling program and a diversion effort, not only on their own, but through some of our retailers that collect the plastic bags. So we're sort of in a different situation than maybe people who live on the coast or live in foreign countries where plastic ends up in the ocean. Ours doesn't end up in the ocean, and most of the time it ends up in recycling, so.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And I'm sorry about that, skipping one, guys. I will go to item number 19, which is, again, the government operations report, and it's a review of public input policies and revisions to commission rules of procedure. And Commissioner Parker has a CDO for us.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I first want to start by thanking the GOC for coming up with some streamlined recommendations for how we can proceed with our work session, or with our agenda setting sessions and our voting sessions. I think by making our procedures consistent across meetings, it helps demystify them for people who are in attendance, and therefore makes some of the information we're presenting and processes they can participate in a little more clear and easier to participate in. I want to extend some of that consistency and transparency to our work sessions as well as our agenda setting and voting sessions by putting them in the same building, a consistent location where people feel comfortable coming if they are already in attendance for our voting and agenda setting sessions, as well as making these available at home via recording. I think that doing so by moving them to the City Hall is the best way to be good stewards of our budget, since we already have the recording equipment available here to make those broadcasts available online and available to the public as in the televised format. I think that unfortunately for some people who work multiple jobs or work full-time, who have young children or might have mobility or other transportation impairments and are not able to attend our work session meetings in the planning building, they are locked out of having opportunities to have the full quality and firsthand knowledge of information that we are presented as commissioners, and therefore aren't able to participate as fully in feedback and in public input as some other members of our community. So by adopting the CDO, we're also extending those opportunities to those folks as well. I think adopting this CDO will be a benefit to us as commissioners. I know a lot of us spend a lot of time on the phone or in emails explaining some of the firsthand knowledge we've received from staff to members of our community who aren't in attendance at our work sessions, and being able to instead refer them to really high-quality presentations that we are given at our work sessions in a videoed format would help us perform our duties better as well. I wanted to also actually make an amendment to my CDO. I think having a countdown clock is a great idea to help people, condense their public input and make sure they get everything that they want to say in a timely fashion. But to a point that was raised during our public input at this meeting, actually instead of using those funds for just a countdown clock, actually having a flat screen monitor in which people could see what agenda item is being spoken upon, as well as the fact that public input is being welcomed at a certain point in a session is a good idea. And so I'd like to amend some of the language of the recommendations to suggest that in lieu of a countdown clock on its own.
Is that a motion?
Yes, so I motion that we adopt the CDO with amended language that we get a flat screen monitor in lieu of a countdown clock.
I'll second.
that motion.
Okay, we have a motion, second, Mr. Herod.
Thank
then
you,
Ms.
Madam
Wright.
Mayor. I was going to second it, but that's fine. I'm supportive of the motion, but I did want to offer a couple of minor tweaks to the language here. The comment was made earlier on about we had tried this in February and then had not followed up with it, largely because commissioners were worried about what they would look like on television. Anybody that's seen my fashion dress sense knows that I have no fashion sense, and so I think vanity amongst the commissioners was really not the issue. The issue is there were some technical issues. The bigger issue, though, is use of staff time. Our work sessions often go for 4 or 5, even 6 hours, and we need at least one and often two people in the booth to monitor and have the program. So those people are then entitled to comp time, which means that they may have 5 or 6 hours off on some subsequent day, which means that they will not have as much time to work on some of the other projects. So that's the issue that we really were having to balance. But I'm supportive of this motion, but I would like to offer two suggestions and a question. So with regards to Part C, the comment was also made about the requirement for filling out cards. And although it was not that doesn't really reflect the tenor of the discussion, I agree with the commentator, the person that made the comment from the podium, that it certainly reads that way. So I would like to offer a slightly different language, which would just change that to read that Part C would provide comment cards that speakers are encouraged to complete before speaking in order to capture accurate spelling of names and addresses. The second is I did talk to our public information officer about moving forward with this, and I know there's a date here of January 2019. He indicated that we could actually start this earlier, and that if we were to have October 2018, that would not present really any problems to him. So I would like to offer that as a friendly amendment. And then the question I have is really more for our staff. I don't have a problem with what Commissioner Parker suggested in terms of a countdown clock / screen type thing. But I guess my question is, do we have any understanding of the cost of that, and where would it be located?
I don't have that.
I'm not sure.
Well, since we did have January as a start date, and I'd also be welcome to have us begin earlier if staff finds a few months to be adequate time to enact those changes. But we could go ahead and approve that and then suss out those details in the time that will take afterwards to get all of this going.
That would be fine by me if the proposer and the seconder are
Yes, I'm fine
amenable
with
to
both
that.
of your suggested changes, including item C, which right now says require, and you're saying encourage.
provide comment cards that speakers are encouraged to complete before speaking. Wordsmithing.
Ms. Wright, you were next.
Yes. Mike didn't know that I was next, but I was next.
That's fine.
And you got to get in line.
So I do like what's coming forward with these changes at this time. The countdown clock, I really did like the explanation of that. I watched the agenda setting meeting, and I do feel like when somebody's speaking, to know they have 25 seconds left versus how quick the color changes. So I'm not sure where this amendment is, but I would like to keep the countdown clock, and that start in October 2018, and maybe in January would be when something more elaborate with the video display would be, because that seems like that has a lot more problem solving to be done logistic-wise and who actually works it. Where's the motion right now?
Okay.
It's been amended by Andy with those two changes.
Okay.
So you're changing one of.
So I would like to have I would like to amend it, if you guys are amenable, to keep the October 2018 initiation of the original commission-defined option that includes the countdown clock with Commissioner Harrod's improvements on Area C, and that the video display be researched by staff for feasibility of being initiated in January 2019.
Is that acceptable?
That's
Commissioner Parker?
acceptable. I would worry that doing that sort of slow transition might add to some of Andy's budgetary concerns, having to acquire a clock and then later acquire a second piece of equipment, but I'm okay with that otherwise.
I think I was.
And Mr. Dickerson, Mr. Hamby, and then Ms. Link.
So I just wonder if.
I told you you had to go
if we
straight.
wanna-
Haircut, do you?
If we want to be good stewards, we have a projector and we have a screen. Why could we not figure out a way to project something up on the screen, bring the
Maybe the
screen
corner
down
of the screen,
partially,
yeah.
and have it up there? What's on there? People can see it from the audience. You could even put a clock on there as well. I mean, it seems like that would be something. I mean, we've got the equipment already in place. Why not just figure out a way to use it?
Get Dark Side of the Moon playing in the background.
I mean,
I think we could just have
wouldn't have to buy any equipment.
Commissioner Neesmith doing numbers together.
Yeah, 1, 2. Mr. Handy.
Well, I was going to suggest the same thing as Commissioner Dickerson. That's actually the way the school board does it. They have a clock that is on a screen like that with that. So works fine, and it's kind of nerve-wracking. My bigger concern, however, was the comment that we have work sessions that last 5 or 6 hours. So if this is going to be on TV, I can. Yeah, I can watch it home on TV.
And of course, one of the things that hasn't been discussed is that we start our meetings at 5:30. Many people don't get dinner, and they're 5 and 6 hours.
So
and-
hopefully we can address
and
that.
There may be breaks that'll have to be taken.
We
so-
don't have to take up
but
too much
whatever,
TV time.
yeah.
It works
I won't be here much longer, so I'll let y'all worry about that. Ms. Link?
Yeah, I get the need for a flat screen TV because the view from here, from the side here of that projected TV or projected screen is really difficult the way the light plays, and you do have to dim the light significantly. So I can see how there's a real need for a flat screen TV, and also there probably are some logistics and budgetary concerns about how to acquire that. And as far as the countdown clock, I can see how that countdown clock could be projected onto the screen or part of the TV. But from what I understand, the clerk controls the clock. So there would, I see how we could use the screen and the clock. Is that correct?
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, because the screen theoretically would probably be controlled in the booth down the hall, but the clerk has separate control of the clock. So we would need both devices.
Yep.
Mr. Neesmith?
It occurs to me that thing right there, as beautiful as it is, serves absolutely no function except taking up a wall.
Yep.
And we could put a flat screen TV up there and get rid of that. And have a flat screen TV up there that does whatever we want it to do. So that's another thing to consider. And, the flat screen TVs have gotten darn cheap. So, just an idea. But I really like the idea of letting the audience know what's going on.
Yeah.
public input about items, da-da-da-da-da-da. And there's some logistics involved, so we take them off the consent agenda, then somebody's got to change the screen, I guess. Or we simplify it and say it's public input about the consent agenda. And then it's public input about item 17 and the title. I think that would really help the citizens participate and understand what the heck's going on here. Might help me, too.
Mr. Harrod.
Well, as to Commissioner Neesmith's last comment, I'm not sure anything could help him on some occasions. But I think Commissioner Link actually raises a really important point, which is that the countdown clock is really controlled by the clerk, because she's, she starts it when people start to speak. And I think I think having a flat screen TV showing what item we're on, much as if it would be as if you were watching on television, I think is a good idea. But I think maybe these are slightly separate issues, and so I'm happy to explore that option. I think it's a good suggestion. But listening to Commissioner Link, I think she's correct that the countdown clock and the TV are slightly different. They're different beasts, and so I think we should go ahead and approve what we have now, with the understanding that we will look also into figuring out how to have a flat screen TV, and it may involve removing that and removing that.
Okay, Ms. Parker, everybody has to have an initiation. So yours is you need to restate what we're voting on.
Okay, so I motion that we adopt the GOC recommendations, including directing staff to figure out how best to represent a countdown clock as well as a screen giving information about what item is being given comment upon, as well as what else? As well as the fact that public comment is available, the time for public comment is open. That we will make available comment cards that speakers may complete in order to capture accurate spelling of names and addresses. And that effective by no later than January, we will move work sessions to the Chambers of City Hall and adopt and follow for work sessions the same process for airing live and recording these meetings as we do for agenda setting and voting sessions.
I think the date was October, we were suggesting.
So and in case staff requires additional time, I wanted to leave it open to by no later than January, but as soon as possible. How's that?
I think they need a specific time.
Okay,
And
so by October, to adopt and follow for work sessions the same procedures for recording and screening work sessions as much as agenda and voting sessions.
Good job, I couldn't have done that. Okay? Okay, we have had the motion restated.
Consider yourself
Put a
hazed.
dress code in this?
No, no dress code. No dress code.
And no dinner break.
Yes, Joe.
It'll be a lot easier for us to have that.
Okay, we have a motion, it's been restated, everybody understand it? Okay. Did we get it, and we have a second? Yeah,
I think
motion
Commissioner
second.
Neesmith seconded it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you,
And
guys.
Madam Mayor, speaking of dinner breaks,
Yes.
as you know, in our agenda, we say that if the meeting's not over by 8:15, we'll take a break.
We're there.
And we have quite a bit of business, and we still have executive session after this.
Absolutely.
So I would
Yeah.
like to suggest that we take that break, either take it now or take an extended break, maybe a half an hour break between the meeting and the executive session, so people might be able to get something to eat. People that have to stay for the executive session. Anyway, there's two things that I've thrown out there for you to
I
consider.
got a piece of cold pizza upstairs. Mr. Harrod?
I mean, I think that would be fine. My suggestion would be one of the next two zoning matters, I think, is going to be pulled, or there's a request to pull it. So maybe we can, and two of them are text amendments, maybe we can struggle through these last things and then take the
Pretty
break.
fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are pretty fast.
And then that will also allow our staff to go home.
True, but then we might have extended public comment.
That's true.
You know, and then
Okay.
we
That's true.
have probably 2-hour executive session after this.
Okay, obviously, guys, some of us need a break. So let's take a 15-minute break. And it's 10 after, so be back. Well, we'll make it a 20-minute break, and that'll give you plenty of time to maybe find something to eat. Come back at 8:30.
Lots of cooks in the kitchen.
Okay, we're short one of our commissioners, but it's 8:30, so 8:31 actually, so we're going to get started back. And our next item of business, we need a motion for suspension of rules.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the item that we need to cover under that is our commission, our committee, board and authority appointments. And I have that list, and I ask for a motion from one of our commissioners to approve the list of nominees.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion second, all in favor? Okay. And these are the people that we just voted to accept. Athens-Clarke County Library Board, Jane Russell, her term will expire 12/31 of 19. And Kenneth White, partial term expiring 12/31/19. Georgia's Innovation Corridor Joint Development Authority, Susan Bogardas, a 4-year term expiring 5/18 of 22. Our Hearings Board, Terrence Jordan, partial term expiring 6/30 of 20. Historic Preservation Commission, Cameron Yurdy, partial term expiring 6/30 of 19. Vision Committee, Denisha Brooks, a 3-year term expiring 6/30 of 21. Imani Carter, a 3-year term expiring 6/30 of 21. And Mumbi Okandaya, 3-year term expiring 6/30 of 21. I want to thank these people for being willing to serve, and also thank those who applied that didn't get selected this time. And please keep trying, because we have a lot of positions that we need advice from our citizens. So we couldn't do our jobs, quite frankly, without it. So now's the time that we go into our public hearing and deliberation on planning commission items. And those are a little bit different for comment. There's an opportunity for 10 minutes segments, pro and con on rezoning issues. Has anyone signed up for those? Okay, no one signed up for those, so we'll be just observing our normal 3-minute deadline, a 3-minute allocation, and the light again will be green when you start speaking. When it turns yellow, you have a half a minute left, so please complete your comments. And we do these one at a time, so we'll have public comment, then we'll come behind the rail and have discussion and vote, and then go to the next item. So the first item for public comment is item number 21, and that's a request of Michael Thurmond for Centurion Investments, LLC. Is someone here that wanted to comment on that?
Has that been withdrawn, Madam Mayor?
I think we have to vote to allow them to withdraw.
I think you received a written request to withdraw, but that has to be voted on by you.
Right. And that's why I wondered if somebody wanted to speak to it. Okay, we'll come behind the rail
Motion for acceptance of withdrawal, Madam Mayor?
Second.
have a motion and a second for acceptance of the withdrawal request. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, item number 22 for public comment now. And this is a
Excuse me,
request of
Madam Mayor.
W&A Engineering for Hope Haven of Northeast Georgia Incorporated.
Madam Mayor? Mike has a...
You know, I was, when you said, I'm sorry, there may have been some confusion on last time. I don't know that did they request a withdrawal? They request to table it? Is it?
The original request to you, as I understand it, was they wanted to seek your opportunity to table for a month, but there was
Right.
a letter submitted today
Oh, okay, I just hadn't
Yeah.
seen the letter.
Yeah,
I'm
this is-
sorry.
requesting to withdraw, that they wanted to go back, redesign, and perhaps come back under a different proposal.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
it is
that's
a
fine.
withdrawal,
I'm
so we
sorry.
voted right. Okay, great. So item number 22, the request from W&A Engineering for Hope Haven of Northeast Georgia. Is there any public comment on that? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Scott Haynes, landscape architect. I work for W&A Engineering, here representing Hope Haven, Northeast Georgia, Inc. Just keep my comments very short. I just want to say thank you for all the consideration on this request and past requests for Hope Haven, trying to bring them into compliance so they can continue doing good work in this community. I'm here to answer any questions if you have any. We're fine with all the conditions that are put forth and were modified in the with the additional condition that was discussed in the agenda setting. So,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haynes. Mr. Behrman, will you read the ordinance for us?
An ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to special use approval in the CR Commercial Rural District for a parcel of land at 200 Vincent Drive comprising approximately 5.82 acres and for other purposes.
Okay, this is in Mr. Bailey's district, but he's not here. Would anybody else like?
I'll take it.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll propose that we approve this special use.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ma'am.
Is there a CDO?
Oh, yeah, Jared had a CDO.
Yeah.
Oh, well, he's not here.
That's right.
It's the amendment that.
It's a
references.
typical
It's
amendment
at the
in those last
Similar to what you approved on the
condition.
previous ones.
Okay, well, yeah, I'll motion that we approve with the CDO.
Second.
A motion and a second for the CDO from Mr. Bailey. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Item number 23 is proposed text amendment regarding a rural event facility. And we have an ordinance. Would you read that, Mr. Berryman?
An ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to zoning and development standards for rural events, facilities, and for other purposes.
Okay. And I almost forgot, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to item number 23? And this is the text amendment regarding rural event facility. Okay, seeing none, we'll come behind the rail. Mr. Neesmith.
Yeah, I attended the conversation at the Planning Commission about this text amendment. It makes good sense. I think it approves its purpose, which is to allow these rural events, keep them to a reasonable size, and a small group of less than 300 people. So I'll move for acceptance of this text amendment.
Okay, I have a motion. Do we have a second?
I have a second and a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
So a lot of this one actually came out of my district. Someone was using a barn for weddings and whatnot and wasn't approved use. It's something we've been working on for, staff has been working on. I've been receiving some comments from constituents about it. But I think what's great about it is there's so much to enjoy in the rural areas of our community. I mean, there aren't a lot, but there are some rural areas to this community. I live in one of them. And I think it's great that we're leveraging those assets to help with economic development. And these people are going to be able to showcase and share with their pride and joy for weddings and other small events and stuff. And so I think it's really great, and I applaud staff and Planning Commission's effort to create this text amendment.
So any further discussion? Have a motion, second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. And we have, and this is our final item on our agenda tonight, and it's item number 24, which is a proposed text amendment regarding halfway houses. Would you read the ordinance, Mr. Berryman?
An ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to zoning and development standards for halfway houses and for other purposes.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to item number 24? Okay, seeing none, we'll come behind the rail. Do I have a motion?
I'll move for approval. Second.
Have a motion, second, any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now is the time for anyone in our audience who would like to speak to an item that was not on tonight's agenda. Please join us and give us your name and address, and take you 3 minutes.
Tyler Dewey, 1075 West Broad Street. I'm here tonight to talk quickly about 2 items that were scheduled to be on the agenda earlier this month but have been removed, and that is the Chase Street, Chase Street, Oneta Street, Barber Street, Boulevard Street projects, and Barnett Shoals reconfigurations. For the Barnett Shoals, I think I can more fully understand why that project was pulled from the agenda, considering proximity of the public input event to when the agenda setting happened and when this voting meeting would happen. But we still, at Bike Athens, deeply support that project and really hope that those types of bike facilities can come to the east side and start to connect the bike lanes to College Station and the Greenway and really start to knit this community together and give people real deep transportation options. Since Chase Street, and we were sort of the group that kick-started the whole Chase Street debate back in 2015, I think we've written and spoken enough about that. 3 more minutes probably isn't going to change your mind much. But I was at the May Courts meeting. Bike Athens, an official May Courts stakeholder. The mayor was there, and they did some more surveys of folks from Clarke County and in the area, and I thought there were some really interesting results. So when asked to rate the quality of bike facilities on a 1 to 5 scale, with 5 being the best and 1 being the worst, 28% said 1. Another 35% of people said 2. About only 12% gave it better than a 3. When asked why people don't bike more often, 24% said safety. When asked if more facilities were available, quote, would you bike more? 45% of people said yes. When asked what are the top 3 ways to address transportation challenges in the region, by far the most popular answer was more bus service. By far the second most popular answer was to provide more places to walk and bike. Through Envision Athens, through Athens in Motion, through the Atlanta Corridor studies, through pretty much any time we go out to the public and say, what do you want to see more of? The answer comes back, we want more buses, we want more places to walk and bike. So please, let's get these back on the agenda. Let's vote to approve them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dewey.
Good evening, Alvin Sheets, address Post Office Box 5142. Tonight I represent the local NAACP Unit 5180 as well as a body of clergy. I'm hesitant to say, if anyone with me, please stand. Most everybody's left already, but nevertheless, excuse me, we're not here to bash the police tonight. However, we do want to bring some things to your attention. With the recent release of Safeguarding Children of Arrested Parents, the White House, in conjunction with the International Association of Chiefs of Police, developed national standards for the treatment of children at the time of parental arrest. Folks, I'm referring to about 2 weeks ago, a young child was handled somewhat roughly. While a focus on parental arrest may seem narrow, the number of children, adults, and systems affected by the issue is sizable. There are at least 3 reasons why law enforcement agencies should address this issue and consider how children observe and experience interactions between law enforcement and their families when the arrest of parents is involved. First thing I'd like to say before I run out of time is, what I'd like for you to do is talk with the chief of police and get some money into his program so that he can have the funding necessary to teach his officers how to deal with children in domestic violence situations, how to work with children. I mean, Chief already said in the AJC, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, that the officers are not trained to work with children. All right? They're trained, this is what I'm saying, they're trained to take control. The man took control. I understand that. However, there's another side to this thing. First, when a child observes the arrest of a parent, the child often displaces feelings of anger and shame onto the arresting officer instead of the parent, who acted in a manner that warranted arrest. This displacement can lead to enduring hostility toward law enforcement. By training officers to support children better at the time of parental arrest, law enforcement agencies can turn such situations into an opportunity for officers to connect with children and be seen as rescuers and the good guys. This dynamic is especially powerful when a parent is arrested on charges of domestic violence. Somewhere in our nation, there was a young man, 9 years old, and a little baby, about 1 year old. Mother was arrested. Officers took mother off, didn't know if there was another parent in the house. Child left alone for 2 weeks. Just so happened a neighbor took notice that this child was left unattended and called defects. The officer didn't know. We need to make sure that our officers are well prepared when they go into a domestic violence situation. When you got 36% poverty, folks, you got problems. And you have some more problems. We need to head off these problems before it becomes something serious. Athens need to stay out of the news for such events. That's what I'm trying to say. And very quickly.
Mr. Sheets, actually, you've gone well. Oh, I'm sorry. You
Not
haven't.
quite.
I'm sorry.
Right.
I heard the little click and I didn't look.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Data shows that some officers do not consider how their interactions affect the children who observe them. Officers must represent a voice of reason and actively model caring and responsive adult behavior when possible. They must also collaborate with social workers and child advocates to connect traumatized children with services they need. I wish you the best, folks. Please put money in the Chief Police Program. Peace
Thank
be
you,
with
Mr. Sheets.
Hello, my name is Will Eskridge, and I reside at 455 Vincent Drive. I've been a resident of Athens, Georgia for 12 years, and I've been a homeowner of 455 Vincent Drive since October 24th, 2008. I'm a self-employed artist and married to a Clarke County district educator. Together we have a 6-month-old boy. I'm here tonight to bring to your attention the major, extremely major stormwater drainage issues we are having on Vincent Drive. There is massive flooding happening right now. I don't know if y'all got a chance to see the video. I know some of y'all did. I implore you to check your email and watch the video since I'm unable to present it tonight. The dates for the footage are 6/27/2018, 7/5 of this year, 7/22 of this year. However, it does this every time there is a rainstorm and has since I have lived at 455 Vincent Drive. I was paradoxically told by the Streets and Drainage Inspector, Kelvin Wayless, I think that's how you pronounce his name, that there have been issues over in our area for years, but the superintendent, Kevin Gentry, told me that it was the first time he had heard of it. I have talked with several neighbors that said that they had called the city in the past regarding this issue. From my recent understanding, the Vincent Drive area was improperly developed before Athens-Clarke incorporated it, and that the city has known about this and knew it would be a problem in the future. Well, it's the future, and it's a major problem. When I brought the flooding and health concerns of inadvertently breeding a plethora of mosquitoes to the attention of the superintendent, he proceeded to send me a form explanation of what the stormwater utility pays for, as well as government link on mosquito control tips. I met with them, the inspector and the superintendent on July 5th of this year, and I was told that the issue was the lay of the land and that the water has to go somewhere. I was also told that flooding was not coming from the road nor public right-of-ways, despite the video footage clearly showing this. I was also told that this is the homeowner's responsibility to keep the culverts underneath the driveways cleared out, but that it's the city's responsibility to keep the ditches and the public right-of-ways maintained of debris and vegetation. Mr. Gentry said to call him anytime there's debris in the ditches, and they'll come out and clear it. There is always debris in the drainage ditches. They are completely overgrown. I would be calling him every day. In my decade of living here, 4 of which have been as a work-at-home artist, I have never seen a city maintenance vehicle or any sort of clearing or maintaining of the vegetation or debris. However, even if the ditches were kept clean, it seems to be futile, as many of us do not even have drainage ditches on our side of Vincent Drive, which happens to be the lower side, so we get the brunt of the flooding. Even I talked with one neighbor on the opposite side of Vincent who experiences flooding as well. This is simply unacceptable as a tax-paying citizen and a contributing member of our community. I hope you will take our petition seriously and consider making the right moves to update the stormwater drainage infrastructure in our area. Thank you for your time and consideration. Please don't forget about us on Vincent Drive.
Thank you, Mr. Eskridge.
Good evening. Sam Raffle, 230 Spalding Circle. I just wanted to comment on a recent statement that was in the newspaper from national administrators that what we were engaged in trying to improve EMS response times in Athens, Georgia was a quote-unquote witch hunt. I just wanted to clarify that we're not asking for Trump's tax returns, and it is not a witch hunt. What we're hunting for, though, is the truth, and we're hunting for some very desperately needed transparency from this company. We're still asking for an accounting of these 31,055 calls, 36 per page here, that exceeded the standard between 2014 and 2017. We believe that the only way to find the truth is through an audit. I think it would certainly clear some things up, help us make decisions going forward. A conservative figure, if you took just 5% of this number here, just 5% of these calls, if 5% of these calls were time-sensitive, life-threatening emergencies that needed immediate treatment in the hospital, that's 1,500 calls in 4 years. That's about 1 call per day. So we're supposed to believe that these numbers are benign and that they don't represent a negative impact on our citizens. But that would kind of rank up there with me saying that I have a really large piece of ocean property in Oklahoma that I'd like to sell you. But I think we know where that would go. So I thank you for your time, I thank you for your attention, and I look forward to improving EMS response times in Athens-Clarke County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Raffle. Anyone else wish to speak to us? Okay, we'll come behind the rail, and this is the time that we have reports, and the first one's mine, and the first thing I want to do is tell you all about Adopt a Highway proclamations. We have one from She Speaks Academy Mentoring Program, and they're going to keep Whitehead Road from Jefferson Road to Tallahassee Road picked up. The Brianna Ellis and family, the Robert Harbin Road from South Main Street to Lexington Highway. And as I always say, thank you so much to these people, but for the rest of y'all, please quit throwing your trash out, so this is so necessary. And I have a couple of things to assign to committee. I would like for our GOC to look at HB 419 related to fireworks and noise. Now the General Assembly has given us some local control over it and bring some recommendations back to us. And also to GOC, a review of the public input procedures for planning commission meetings. And I'd like to remind everybody here tonight, all of our commissioners, that I need the recommendations for the 2020 Citizens Advisory Committee by Monday, if at all possible, because again, we do have a short window that we need to get things done in. And I think that's all I have. Mr. Williams, do you have anything for us?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Behrman?
Nothing, thanks.
Ms. Maddox?
No, ma'am.
Okay, well, we'll now move to our commissioners, and we'll start with Ms. Parker. Told you we we're going to break you in.
Well, I've met recently with Mr. Raffle and do feel pretty concerned about the data that he has regarding response times. And I know that we have sort of given our own public comment on the feasibility of having our EMS services taken over by the fire department. I would like to encourage us to consider to explore that option, as well as the potential for doing some sort of audit to figure out what is going on with the numbers that he's discussing, because 1,500 life-threatening calls in 4 years, that's a lot of people whose lives could be altered by the quality of service they're getting from our EMS here. So I appreciate him stepping forward to bring that back to our consideration, and hope that we can make some.
Ms. Dickerson?
Yeah, I've got a couple things. First of all, I wanted to correct something. Last month, I mentioned about Eastside Spring Fling and all the excitement of all the private sector. I didn't mention Leisure Services, which was a key player in helping us get that off the ground. And so I wanted to at least recognize them, since we got carried away and forgot to recognize them. So I'm sure Commissioner Harrod feels the same way. Wanted to also invite everyone that's interested. August the 14th, the East Athens Business Leaders Association has their monthly meeting at 1 o'clock at Tuxton United Methodist Church on Lexington Road. Our very own planning, I'm not really sure of his title, Gavin Hassemer will be there from the planning department to talk about the Lexington Road corridor study and where we're at on that. So I encourage you to come. August the 16th, just remind everybody, we have stormwater fee meetings at the planning auditorium. There's a 2 o'clock and a 6 o'clock session. Encourage people to go to that, since we are evaluating the rate structures and credits, alternate funding strategies and whatnot. There is also an online survey, so if you can't go to the meeting, just go to our website, and I guess probably search stormwater meetings or something and find it, or go to the Transportation Public Works Department page. I certainly want to point out we had a lot of support during the storm we had with the hail, and I actually was out of town, so I didn't see it. But apparently the west side got hail, the east side didn't, so I think that tells you something. But but the fire, the police, landscape, solid waste, transportation, public works, facilities, streets and drainage, all of them provided, by way of the manager's report, provided a lot of support over those days, and I just wanted to point out appreciation for that. I heard from a lot of my residents about the leaf and limb. We were supposed to be that following Monday and got delayed, and people were happy, because normally what happens is they just come through, pick up, and then we have a storm. They have to wait 5 or 6 weeks. So the only other thing I have is I had a note on my calendar about following up on septage fees. We had agreed that we would review the out-of-county septage, whether or not it increased or decreased based on or whether or not illegal dumping may have increased or decreased as far as that. That was one of the considerations we had in LRC. And I guess I want to follow up to see how, if we've seen any change in that as a result of not allowing out of county, right?
Yeah.
Who did that? Anyway, so maybe we can get a follow-up on that.
Not outside of J-Boom.
Right, yeah, Jay, all right. Okay, thank you, that's all.
Ms. Terrett?
Oh, well, I would second much of what Commissioner Dickerson said. And I'm also very happy that the daffodil is now our flower, not least of which is because it's the national flower of Wales, and I'm half Welsh. And so to all of the Welsh-speaking people out in the audience, I'd like to say...
Which half is Welsh?
Given that my mother might watch this, I'll have to say the mother half. But I would like to say to all of the Welsh-speaking people out in the audience, which I'm sure is thousands, Iechyd ar pob Cymru, which means good health to all Welsh people. There you go.
Ms. Bill?
I think top him.
No, I wouldn't try.
I won't try.
Ms. Tamby? You can, I bet.
Well, Sharon mentioned Hill on the west side. So I was going to say, I was going to say, at least we don't have Andy Herod living on the west side and his Welshness.
Mr. Neesmith?
West side is where stuff happens, sure. I don't have anything, thank
But
you.
apparently not gymnastics.
Mr. Bailey?
Madam Mayor, thank you for the opportunity, but I really don't have anything except to say that I'm sorry that it took longer on my break. I was misled on how long a taco would take.
Well, we took care of your item and it passed.
Now, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Wright?
Yeah, I have a couple quick things here. I wanted to point out that on August 24th, the Historic Preservation Division of Georgia Department of Natural Resources has a nomination from our county to the National Registration of Historic Places. They're considering the Oconee Street School at 594 Oconee Street, and we've already approved that redevelopment for residential, and so I think that's pretty exciting that that's happening by the property owner. And then I had some highlights from the Town and Gown conference that I went to with Allison McCulloch and some other campus people on some topics that I look forward to being able to bring forward in depth for when we do our goals and objectives. But they did include details about off-campus rental listings and, of all things, party registration. They have ways that this is non-Greek, but if you're having a party at your house and you call in and register it and there's a noise complaint, then they know who to call and say, get your party under control. And if you have a noise complaint and your party's not registered, you get a huge fine versus, again, trying to get the compliance. So some creative ways to deal with some of the things that that the cities deal with that have universities.
I want to ask you a question, though. Is that just for students?
It's not.
'Cause I
No,
had
it's
some pretty
noise
rowdy
ordinances.
parties, and I
Yeah,
won't
it's
tell
a
everybody
noise
in
ordinance
advance.
for party, and then I don't think people get to know where the parties are. We don't advertise where the parties are, but it's kind of a closed listing there. I know what you all are thinking, but that's not what it's for. But so the noise violations are distributed at like $350 on site, the citation, and then $350 to the property owner. And if the party's not registered, so then the registered parties get to generate a noise ordinance complaint with a phone call, and they have 20 minutes to get it under quiet. But they also end up with listing these properties, and when the properties get listed as violators, then there's additional things that the county can do for them in limiting their rental. So that was kind of interesting. They also talked about how transit passes for downtown employees were helping open up dealing with parking issues that they have and different things. So hopefully when we get to our goals and operations, but I just wanted to get that in while I could, or I forgot mine. Thanks, and thanks for everybody with the daffodils stuff. That's really exciting.
You did a good job pulling that.
And we wanted to wait and do it to where the board would be available to come and give you your present. They were very excited about that. I kept that really close. You didn't know that.
That was such a nice surprise, because I literally thought
You
we were
thought that was
presenting
cool.
something new for them, additional for them.
And thank you for framing the resolution for it.
Ms. Link?
Yeah, I want to address a few things brought up by folks at the podium. First of all, the Chase Street Corridor project was pulled from the agenda. I was among those who requested that, primarily because I feel like it was presented somewhat misleadingly. It's not a Chase Street Corridor project. It affects Chase Street, it affects Boulevard, it affects Barber Street and Oneta Street, and it's never been fully presented to the public. It was presented at our work session, but it was never presented as a whole for public input. And I'm hearing, all kinds of concerns about it and misinformation. So I want to request, and I made this request as soon as it was presented at the work session. I want to request that there be a public presentation of that project, and not just one of these drop in and look at some things, things on easels, an actual presentation of the project that allows some back and forth discussive input and questions to be asked publicly. So yeah, I would like to request that before our next agenda setting meeting, really, I'd like to see that happen. I also understand that there are a couple traffic studies being done on those corridors. Boulevard is getting a traffic study because there have been requests for speed bumps. And also, the Oneta Street Millworks project is going to be generating a traffic study in the near future. So I kind of wonder if we shouldn't wait till we get some data, because I've requested some data along these corridors to kind of assess the need, and apparently we don't have the kind of speed and trips per day data that we normally would require when considering these projects. So I feel like we really need to put all the pieces into place and get, a real public presentation so we can thoroughly assess moving forward with these projects, because it's a very expensive, the overall project is like $6 million. That could definitely eat up, most of our SPLOST monies. I also want to point out that, we've recently seen some bus routes changes, which have made things a lot easier for folks in some of our outlying areas. But unfortunately, they've greatly reduced service on Prince Avenue. UGA has eliminated bus service at ACC stops on Prince Avenue and is only going down half of Prince Avenue. They're going down Milledge, but they won't be stopping at Athens-Clarke County stops. So that eliminates about 3 buses per hour in each direction. But also the ACC rescheduling, they now have 2 buses following each other within 5 minutes. So that greatly reduces the frequency. Typically, if you miss an ACC bus, you can just sit and wait for the next one 30 minutes. That'll at least get you downtown or to the multimodal center. We hear from Tyler that, the greatest request for transportation needs is for more bus service, yet by expanding our service, we've also decreased the frequency. So I would like to, Athens Transit Director to take a look at that frequency and see if those routes can be timed so there is some space between the routes, so it does give riders more options. And I want to address Vincent Drive. There are a lot of problems on Vincent Drive, and stormwater is certainly one of them. Speeding is huge. Folks on Vincent Drive that have to cross the street to check their mailboxes. And there's a desperate need for sidewalks out there. So I would like to see us take a really big assessment of all the needs out on Vincent Drive, and a sidewalk project could also implement some stormwater accommodations. So I'm going to be talking about a SPLOST project out on Vincent Drive to address some of the many needs out there.
Mr. Kurtz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of quick policy notes and then a couple of announcements. I'm favorable with the Chase Oneta Barber project moving forward. I was at 2 of the public presentations, and I found the interaction between staff and the public helpful at those sessions. The first one of those kind of provided an array of options, and the second was more definitive. So I'm very much looking forward to those moving forward. And I think beyond Vincent Drive, what we find is that we've got a lot of areas that were built out in the 60s and 70s and 80s before we had an opportunity really to do a kind of comprehensive look at how we manage stormwater. I think we're doing a much better job now. And when we had a work session around stormwater about a year ago, I think all of us kind of echoed the same theme with Drew Ressler and his staff, which is that, we want some program that manages these impacts on numerous parcels in some of these older areas. Because certainly we've seen some very near in-town stuff. We've had some similar challenges on Freeman Drive and in areas like that. The other thing I want to mention is something that's also come up before, and that's an update to our lighting ordinance. It's about 9 years old, and we've had a couple of amendments to plan developments or rezonings around lighting, and so I'd like us to take a look at just a couple of simple updates that we could make around our lighting ordinance, particularly around spotlights and color temperature as well. Finally, on the announcements front, coming up on the same exciting Saturday, the 25th of August, I will be involved in a couple of events for local nonprofits. One is for Children's First, which does a lot of children and family support work, including running the court-appointed special advocate programs in Clarke and County County. And I will be doing their Over the Edge fundraiser, in which I rappel off a tall building. Some people will be hoping that gravity is working very well that day. We'll see. So I hope everybody can come out to that. And then that evening for Project Safe at Groovy Nights, I will be lip-syncing a hit of the 1980s that I'm not going to reveal to you tonight. But I will say it will be working against type.
Will you
leave
be
it at that.
expressing yourself, Kelly?
There's going to be an exciting lip sync opportunity. We'll see how much fun that is. So please come out to the Foundry that evening.
Will you be doing the moonwalk?
I'm impressed with anybody that does that over the
No
edge.
dancing. Well, maybe some movement.
I said, Kelly, I'm impressed with anybody that does that over the edge. That scares me to death. Yeah. Mike, you wanted to say something.
I did want to add something about Chase Street, and I'm actually wanting this to move forward as well, but before any work is done on any more of the, I'd like to figure out what we have done with the public input, and, certainly if any more work needs to be done, it needs to be decided by the full mayor and commission, and not just as a request at the end of a meeting.
Okay. We have a motion for adjournment.
I make a motion that we enter executive session and adjourn following that session.
A motion second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, folks.
Are they using that?
I think they're using Spark.